And once again, Shabbat Shalom, Mishpacha Rabbi Saminata from the soil on the USA this time. Can everybody hear me, please? If you can give me a 1 if you can hear me. Okay, great. So you can hear me loud and clear. Let me just adjust my microphone and things. Okay. All right. We'll kickstart it. But those of you that have come in early into the room, just as I guess it's afternoon in the UK, in Europe. Shabbat Shalom to you over there as well. It's probably around 1:47 over there in the afternoon, and probably 2:47 in Europe as a whole. Okay, so just a notice first that our classes next week are going to shift back 1 hour. So we will start Eastern time at 8 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. So that's 8 o'clock Eastern time, and that will be Central time will be 7 o'clock. So we'll push the classes back 1 hour. The reason being that I'd like to finish early on the Shabbat, so that people can have more time with their families. They can, do their lunches, because a lot of people like to eat lunch around midday and thereabouts. But the problem is this, that sometimes our classes run way over midday. We kind of still running at like 3 o'clock, Eastern time, and so it gets very long, and it kind of separates families from actually enjoying the Shabbat and having get-togethers together. So I would rather prefer that we give you some concentrated teaching. We teach you something important from the Bible, from the Holy Word of God, and then you go spend time with your family. You can engage in discussions and whatever else you need to, and enjoy your Sabbath rest. At least you have a portion of the Sabbath day to your family and yourself. I think that's very, very important. Now, as you know that I've been traveling, I just returned from the East, and it was a very, very good journey. I would like to report to you that I lost about 15 pounds, which I thought was kind of surprising. I didn't expect to lose 15 pounds, but I did. And I'm not too surprised about that, because I didn't really eat a lot out there. I was very, let's say, I was very picky on my food, what I ate and what I didn't eat. So that's that basically. But I want to also give thanks to the Master Jesus, Abba Yahweh, for the great mercies, travel mercies, and the favor that He bestowed upon me as I traveled the lands in the East. I will tell you some incidences which you will find fascinating, as certainly I did. Is I went to the new airport, in a brand new airport they built in Pakistan, in the capital of Pakistan. Beautiful airport, and really nice, facilities. Facilities are very, very good, just like pretty much here. The facilities are almost similar in comparison. In fact, I was surprised that even the hand dryers were the same as you find in the US airports. So, in the UK airports, you have these Dyson hand dryers. Well, they had the same Dyson hand dryers there. So, they are in comparison to the European and Western standards. So, really clean airport, really nice marble floors. But before you get into the airport, there's a big security checkpoint, and they check every car that goes in. And I was in a rinky-dink taxi. It's kind of funny because that taxi ran out of fuel about 2 kilometers before the airport, and fortunately for the man that he had some spare fuel on hand, and we were like in the middle of nowhere, and there was no gas stations there either. So he put the spare fuel in, and we were on our way to the airport. When we got to the airport, practically every car was being checked by the bomb squad, because they had a bomb squad member there who was checking the cars with his little devices, And then another guy was physically opening the doors and opening the boot and checking that there was nothing untoward, risk to the airport, to the passengers. So as my rinky-dink taxi approached the military guys, I was kind of smiling and seeing that, there was a brand new car in front of me. They stopped that car and they checked it and it was all clear and they let it go. And then my rinky-dink taxi, kind of hugged to the gate, just about to cross, and the guy looked at me and he said, just go, he just didn't want to check me. So I didn't know, my boot wasn't open, my doors weren't open. He just looked at me and just waved on, go ahead, take your said to the taxi driver, take your passenger to his destination. Baruch Hashem, Yahweh, got over there, no checks, nothing. I got into the airport, and then there was another military checkpoint there, checking each person's passport and whether they had a valid ticket. And I approached this man who was, some kind of an officer. And this man looks at me and he goes, do you have a ticket? And I said, my ticket is on my phone. It's an e-ticket. So I hand him my phone. He smiles at me, looks at my ticket, and then he hands my phone back after he looks at my ticket. And I was the only man that he shakes hands with. Listen to this, Mishbah. He extends his hands to me. He smiles, he shakes my hands, says welcome. And then he says, have a safe journey. And he lets me go. And he doesn't do that with anybody else, but particularly with myself. And I thank him and I move on. That's the kind of favor I had in the country of Pakistan. So I give thanks to the Master Jesus for all his favors and mercies that I experienced on my travels. And I was in the roughest part of the country. I spent around 4 weeks in one of the roughest parts of the country, northwest frontier of Pakistan. Go Google it and see what kind of territory that is. It's mountainous territory. There's a lot of mountains around there, and all the Taliban faction, the so-called Taliban, well, guess where they are all situated? They're around there. So it was kind of funny. I was right in their midst. I wasn't far from, where all these guys are operating. But there you have it. You see, sometimes God puts you in the midst of trouble and He gives you shalom. He gives you peace, so that you know that His presence is always with you. And so it was a great experience for me. I didn't travel too much in the country. I only traveled very little. But nevertheless, I did what I had to do, and I returned safely back to the U.S., the shores of the U.S. yesterday on Thanksgiving. I arrived, not yesterday, day before yesterday. Thanksgiving I was back here, and I guess that's how it was meant to be. I tried to come back earlier, I couldn't get back. I tried to get back later, I couldn't get back. So my timing for coming back was on the day of Thanksgiving. And I give thanks to the God of Israel for that He took me there safely and He brought me back safely. And so here we are. And just as I was having some discussions around the food table, I was having discussions with people over there when I met people down there, and I was having discussions with people over here. And always as you're sitting on your food table, discussions usually center around food, and center around commandments. Sometimes what kind of commandments, what does God want us to do? Parsha chapter 8 Vayishlah is all about these things, about Jacob leaving the land, and Jacob being pursued by his enemy, his own brother, and how they come to peace. You see, the important part of that story in chapter 8, Parsha's 8, Bereshit, that's Genesis 32, is not the story of how great Jacob was, or how many wives he had, or how many children he acquired. You see, a lot of people focus on the minutiae, but it's not the minutiae we need to focus on. We need to focus on the major part over here. What is the major portion of that story? The major portion of that story, I was kind of talking to somebody and laughing, and I said, did Jacob know that he's going to the east? All Jacob knew was he's going to the east and get one wife. That's all he knew, and that's all he had his vision and direction for. But he goes over there he not only gets one wife, he actually ends up with 4 wives. He ends up with 12 children instead of 2, 3 little babies. So this man who is, thinking to himself, I'm going to have one wife, I'm going to have some kids with her, and I'm going to be back home with my family. And he ends up, he doesn't end up getting there on time, because as you know, there's a gap in the Bible. As he travels out, there is a major gap where Jacob just disappeared into the wilderness. And then later it transpired, because the Bible doesn't make it clear to you. Torah doesn't tell you what happened, but apparently Jacob ended up in the yeshiva, in the learning center with the Shem and the other teachers that were there. So he ends up there learning about the Bible, the Torah, the laws, the statutes, the judgments, and he was missing for a major portion of his life in that yeshiva before it turns up at Lavan, the uncle, the uncle's house, and where is supposed to, I guess, acquire his wives. And he then acquires his wives, Leah first, instead of Rachel. Instead of Rachel becoming his wife, she becomes number 2 instead of number 1. And as you know, number 2 is an important number in Scripture, and number 2 is usually, the children are much more, usually the children play a major role. As we know with Ishmael and Isaac being number 2 played a major role instead of Ishmael. So he ends up with 4 wives. Now, what are the chances of that? A man going to get 1 wife suddenly gets 4 wives. Now he has to deal with 4 women and their children. I mean, the chances of that, I mean, let's be honest about it. It's slim to none. In our culture today, slim to none chances of that happening. But having said that, the possibilities are huge. That definitely in the life of Jacob, we can clearly see that God was ordering his steps. So this brings me to my joke of the week, which I think is important and will shed some light on our story and on our lecture. So this joke is about some pastors and who are being asked a question, and the question is this: how many pastors does it take to light a bulb? And so at a recent pastors retreat, each minister in attendance was asked this question: how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer is given as follows. A Presbyterian pastor responded, none. If God wants a bulb screwed in, he is sovereign and will do it himself without human effort. The Charismatic pastor replied, none. The bulb doesn't need to be changed. We should pray that it be healed. The Pentecostal pastor responded, none. We simply need to cast out from the bulb the demon of darkness. The Fundamentalist pastor responded, none. We shouldn't even enter the room because we need to keep ourselves separate from all darkness. The Baptist pastor responded, none. If we allow physical contact between a person and the bulb, it might lead to dancing. The Wesleyan minister responded, none. If we just show the bulb its need, it already possesses the power to screw itself in. The non-denominational pastor responded, none. We don't want to make the bulb feel unwanted or uncomfortable. So this poll provides a clear conclusion on the church as a whole, on the different denominations. It's no wonder pastors are always living in the dark. So I thought that was rather humorous and funny, because don't we find that in different denominations that people have these different theologies to different scenarios in our world on what we should do. It really is, you can go to in your own city, you can go to 10 different churches and you'll find 10 different theologies that are operating in that church based on their own preconceived notions and their own understanding and revelation of what they believe is Scripture. And you know that 9 times out of 10 they are wrong. In fact, I'll probably say 10 out of 10 they're wrong. But that's that's really, it doesn't matter which country you're in. It doesn't matter you're in Pakistan, it doesn't matter you're in America, it doesn't matter you're in England, France, it doesn't matter which country you go to. It's all the same everywhere. And with that, I remember the story of my youth. I mean, I'm still youthful, but this story goes back to almost like my childhood. Like I was about 14 years old, and I was going to a British school, and I was in school, and we were taught as children that we are not supposed to eat pork, and we're not supposed to eat chicken, and we're not supposed to eat beef from the quote-unquote white people, English people. I mean, we didn't call them white people, we called them English people. So we were told that we shouldn't eat meat from them because their meat is not permissible. And so I was in school, and we made some friends with some Moroccan kids, and these two Moroccan kids became our friends, and they went up to, in those days, this is interesting information, in those days British schools served hot meals. I mean, nowadays British schools mostly don't serve hot meals, only some of them do, but they used to have these ladies, cooks, who used to actually cook your meals on these stoves and present it to the children, which is amazing, and we're talking about government schools in those days presenting hot meals. And nowadays you'd be lucky to get a hot meal from a private school, let alone government school. And so we were sitting down and with our Moroccan friends, and I asked the Moroccan kid, and because he just went up and got beef from the counter, and I was like, my parents told me not to eat beef, and this guy's eating beef, and this guy's a Muslim. So I said to him, why are you eating beef? Aren't you supposed to be not eating beef? And he just looked at me and laughed. He said, to the effect of, you must be stupid. What do you mean don't eat beef? Beef is allowed. And so he just continued to eat it. That was, that kind of like his shrug off, answer to me, that who told you that beef is unclean? Kind of like to that effect. And so we just carried on, and we just brushed off the incidents as a one-off. Oh well, the Arabs, maybe they know something that we don't know, and I just presumed maybe they knew something that I didn't know, because I read the text in the Arabic, and to me it's a foreign language, although I understood the text, but I thought maybe there's something else around it that I don't understand. I will find out later in life. And obviously they knew something I didn't know, and years later, after being religiously grounded in the mosque, and then grounded in the church, and then grounded in the synagogue, I learned that actually the Moroccan kid was right. What a shock. That was to my system. The day I came to the Torah and I read the passage, and I was absolutely shocked that actually the Moroccan kid was right. I was wrong at 14. And this is what I'm finding today, that if you go to your Bibles, any Bible, it doesn't have to be the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls, the complete Bible, it can be any Bible you desire. It could be the NIV, it could be the KJV, the RSV, all these different letters. You can pick your letters, pick your Bible, and go read it. There is no prohibition against eating beef. And that's what the kid was telling me years ago. And maybe that was God's way of telling me when I was young that don't follow these so-called religions, because none of them are right. They're all wrong. It's the joke with the pastors about the bulb. They're all wrong about it. So the same thing over here with meat. Beef as a meat is permissible in the Bible, and you can eat any type of beef, and you can buy it from any store you like, because the only prohibition, listen to this very carefully, the only prohibition that God put on meat was that you do not eat blood. That's the only prohibition. And I can guarantee you this, if I sit a Jewish man over here, Ashkenazi Jew, if I sit an Ashkenazi Jew here, the very same Jews that sell kosher meat in kosher shops with their kosher, glad kosher labels, I can guarantee you in private, if I set that Jew over here, and if he's a righteous, honest Jewish man, he will tell me that yes, you're right, there is no prohibition on meat other than blood. Because does the Torah go and read the Bible? Does it tell you how to cut the meat? There is no commandment anywhere in the Bible which tells you at the beginning or at the end that how we are supposed to slice our meat. and how we're supposed to butcher our cows, and how we're supposed to butcher our sheep and butcher our lambs and chickens. It doesn't say that. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the only thing that God wanted from us as a people was that we don't consume blood. And I invite you, all the listeners, to go and read Leviticus chapters 17 verses 11 for reference. In fact, if you want to read another scripture, I will invite you to read Deuteronomy chapters 12 verses 23, which tells you clearly only you shall not eat the blood. That's it. And in Leviticus 17:11 is verbatim exactly the same command yet earlier given to the priesthood, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and you're not supposed to eat that. It's used for the atonement purposes only. That is the only commandment, and those are the two major commandments of the Torah which have been misapplied, miscarried out, and used to profit from the whole world. And you know who is profiting from the whole world? It's right in front of you. Go look up all your stores that sell glad kosher and look at the glad kosher industry as a whole, and you will see that a $12 billion industry, how it profits from the ignorant masses because they don't know any better. And yet you could go to Walmart or you could go to any Costco stores and you can find beautiful beef without blood, and you can purchase it and you can consume it, and there will be no sin given unto you. But if you like to pay, more money, then you can pay times 2 or maybe times 3 or even times 4 in some stores, and you can go get beef somewhere else. That's really the essence of my story from my childhood that took me back when I was 14 years old, and it reminded me of my ignorance as a child or as a kid, as a teenager, that how ignorance can take us into our life purposes, and we end up with all sorts of theologies which really have no room and no part to play in our history. Think about it. Have you ever thought about it? I thought about that. I felt so stupid. I thought how stupid I was as a kid, and I didn't know and I didn't grasp it, that I spoke to this guy who came from an Arab land, and yet he knew more than I did as a child, because technically Pakistan is a nation of converts, converts to Islam, and they hardly know any better themselves. They're ignorant people. They don't know. That's their problem. And this is just one side of the story. Years later, I met an Arabic theologian who was taught in classical Arabic. And these are not the kind of people that you meet every day, by the way. And I was very fortunate that this man was sitting in my house. And I asked this man, I said, can you give me a passage from your holy book that says that alcohol is not permitted? Verbatim. I don't want to just see, yes, you can, like the commandment to the effect of, I wanted to see a commandment to the effect of do not drink or do not consume alcohol, something to that effect. So I asked him this question. I said, the reason why I ask you this question is very simple. I see Arab people coming to London. They are booking a whole room, like whole floors of hotels. They book a whole floor of a hotel, and they then have these drinking parties and these other parties that they are doing. So I asked him, I said, is there a passage in your holy book that says that you're not permitted to do that? And he looked at my face, and he probably thought how ignorant people are around you, and probably you as well, because you didn't realize that there is no such thing. And so he pursued to tell me. He kind of smiled and he said, Simon, I have studied classical Arabic. I have a degree in classical Arabic, and the Quran, the holy book of the Muslims, was written in classical Arabic, not in so-called modern Arabic. He said modern Arabic and classical Arabic are totally different. And he said, therefore, what you are taught in these mosques is totally garbage. It's not true. He said, there is no commandment in our holy book, in other words, in their holy book, that you're supposed to not drink. That was his verbatim answer to me. So I said, I chuckled a little bit. I said, so are you telling me that there's no negative commandment to drink, and yet people are teaching everywhere in your mosques that they shouldn't drink? And he said, the answer is yes. So I went searching for it for myself after I discussed it with him, and the verses that I find in the Muslim holy book, from chapter 4 of the Muslim holy book, one of the verses is verse 43, which basically says, O you who have believed, do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated. Let's just stop there. So all it's talking about is do not approach prayer while in intoxication, which means, what about when you're not praying? You can get intoxicated. That's what it's actually saying, if you really think about it. And then if you look at the second chapter that the Muslims point to, is second the second incident. Now this was chapter 4 of the Quran, if you want to go reference it. The next book of the Quran is chapter 5 of the Quran. The chapter 5 of the Quran, the surah there says, O you have believed, indeed intoxicants, gambling, sacrificing on stone altars to other gods, and divining arrows are defilement. Again, defilement from Satan. Again, there's no prohibition that says do not put alcohol in your mouth, according to this one, Surah Al-Ma'idah. Now, of course, you're going to find other verses. Yeah, there's a second chapter, Surah Al-Baqarah, which talks about, they ask you about wine and gambling, say in them is great sin, yet some benefit for people. Again, there is no direct prohibition in that chapter of the Quran that says Muslims are not supposed to drink. Because when I looked at history, Arabic history, Islamic history, I found, this is interesting, I found that people were making alcohol not from like we do over here in I guess in America and in England, not from wheat and barley, but they were making alcohol from dates. So that was readily consumed by the Arab culture. What was prohibited was the intoxication while praying. Most Arabs today understand that. And I found in Pakistan, in big hotels, 5-star hotels, they actually have separate rooms for people of affluence where they can go and drink. It's readily available, but not in smaller hotels. But in the smaller circles, like in the mosque arena, they'll tell you drinking is not allowed, not permitted, etc., etc. But you do not find that in upper circles. So in the Arab culture, Arabs already know that there is no such commandment in their holy books, so they go and drink. They go to hotels and drink. They go wherever they drink. So it's pretty common in the Arab culture. They know that pretty well. So my point that I'm trying to drive home is this. Not so much that, whether we can drink or not. Of course we can drink. That's not even half the question. But the simple point I'm trying to drive home is that ignorance and intolerance are two of the biggest weapons that are used by the elite to keep everybody in darkness. It's a story of the akin to the light bulb. So, the sooner we remove ignorance, the sooner we remove intolerance from our lives, the better and the more prosperous lives you can have. Because ignorance will keep you down there on the floor, and it will keep you in the dark, and you will always be beating yourself about it when you have actually committed no sin. So, sometimes, people in Pakistan, I came across Christians in Pakistan, and they were telling me or asking me about drinking, and I said, where does it tell you not to drink? They didn't have an answer to that question. I said, where does the Bible tell you not to drink? And they didn't know the answer to that. And I said, there is no such commandment. So I said, if there's no such commandment, why would you be, fine, you don't drink, that's one thing, but there's no prohibition against drinking. And I said, if there was a prohibition against drinking, then Noah was probably the biggest sinner, because Noah was described as the first man who actually drank alcohol. So he would technically be the biggest sinner in the Bible because he was drunk, lying naked, and all the rest of it. But of course we know that that is not facts on the ground. That factually we are permitted to drink, but we have to obviously be, how shall I say it? As somebody asked me, they said, are you saying that we can get drunk? I said, no, I'm not saying that you can get drunk, but I'm saying that you can drink and be drunk in your own home, and it doesn't matter. So, I had to kind of put it like that. So, this brings us to another point. The other point is this, that there are, similar to this, that Christians, as we know, generally they eat animals that we consider to be impure in the Torah. Again, I don't judge the Christians for that. I'm not going to sit here and judge them. What they have been taught by their churches, fair enough. They decide that it's okay for them to do so. But my personal belief and my personal opinion on the matter, on the commandment of God, and I want you to be very circumspect, and I want you to investigate and look for yourselves that God actually told us in a state when we were with God. In other words, we were in a state with the divine, in a state of holiness. At that point, God told us that we are not to touch these animals to eat because they would make us impure. That is a pure sum total of that commandment. There is nothing else to that commandment. This is why today you don't see Christians falling down dead after they eat pork or other meats, and you don't actually see your next door neighbor's butcher shop selling mosquitoes and flies and things of that nature that the Torah describes as unclean to eat. It's just not done. So that culture, those things that were happening in that time, and God's presence with us dictated that we had to keep ourselves in a state of holiness, purity, basically. So what we understand, which is why I had to, when I translated the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls Complete Bible and Torah and the Tanakh and everything else that was there, I had to make sure that people understood that there is a difference between kosher and permissible. When you apply the label kosher, know this, that it comes from the world. It comes from Jewish theology. It doesn't come from the Torah. Permissible is a word that comes from the Torah. And know this, that being pure and being not pure also is what the Torah talks about. The Torah doesn't say that if you eat pork you are condemned to death and you are condemned to hell. So I'm not going to sit here and condemn Christians or other people who like pork because that is their staple diet. I mean, Chinese people, their staple diet is pork, believe it or not. They love pork. I'm not going to sit here and condemn the whole Chinese nation for eating pork because that's their staple diet. But all the Torah tells us is that when we were with God, when we were in a state of holiness, we were not permitted to have pork because it would make us impure as the children of Israel. I think that in itself is where we are even today. If we want to remain in a state of purity, then ritual purity basically is all, that's all it's talking about, ritual purity and impurity. It's not talking about condemnation, it's not talking about hell, it's not talking about brimstone. All of the nonsense that you hear from churches about brimstone and hell are not true. So therefore, I'm not saying, and you mustn't misunderstand the commandment. The commandment is there for us, for our good, so that we don't eat these particular animals for our own good. In other words, it will be a benefit to our health. I was reading a particular a man on in a particular book I happened to come across in the state of Ohio, in which the man said, and this was a Christian man, from a Christian background, although I don't think he's like a holy roller, but he basically said to the effect of that, you should not eat pork because it doesn't have benefit it's fat and other things, and a lot of the stuff that you can consume with pork is very unhealthy for the body. So he was speaking more from a health point of view, and he talks about different vitamins and different drinks and whole foods. And one of his recommendations was that instead of having vitamins that you eat, it is better to get whole foods, organic foods, and whole food supplements. And I think there was some websites that he pointed to, and he basically said to the effect of that if you supplement your body with whole food supplements, they are much more better than simply taking multivitamins, etc. That was his kind of take. And he had mentioned prohibition of pork. Now, he didn't say it, he's not Jewish, he didn't say it because of a religious prohibition, he just simply said it from a health prohibition. He said from a health point of view, the pork meat is not very good for your body, and it can cause all sorts of issues and problems. So he said he would advise for people not to consume pork based on health reasons only, not from any religious point of view, because he didn't hold to a religious point of view in that particular manual. I think that manual is lying around here somewhere, around my book, so I'll have to probably find it later and reference it. But that's what that man said. Now I'm going to take you to, of course, now that you're here and you're all paying attention, I think that I think it's very important to talk about some of the secrets of the priesthood, because I think they're not known in the West, but I guess once you hear this recording, some of them will come apparent to you, and you'll be like gasping, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know that." Now you will know it. So these are things that we do, these are things that we know, these are things that we keep in our families, and these are things that I'm going to bring out to you for those of you who want to follow them, to want to benefit your life and your health and your businesses. My goodness, you're going to be delighted about it, I can tell you that. Now, there is something that we do, and Ezekiel the prophet mentioned it in passing, and I think that if I can find it, I will probably give you a little bit of it if I can find it. Let me just give me a moment and scan it through. So here we have it in Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 4. Ezekiel talks about it twice. I want to give you a little bit history of Ezekiel. Ezekiel was, by the way, a prophet, and also he was a priest of the order of I would say Zadok. Zadok is the order of priesthood that God's going to use in the end of days to establish his kingdom and his temple and the reign that we're going to follow through with the Messiah. As you know, the millennial, what they famously call the millennial reign. So in Ezekiel chapter 16 verse 4, it says, "Jerusalem, on the day you were born, there was no one to cut your navel cord, no one to put salt on you and wash you to make you clean, and no one wrapped you in cloth." And then in another verse, in Ezekiel 43 verses 24, Ezekiel talks about, "Then you will offer them before Yahweh," or before the Lord, depending which Bible you read. "The priests, the Kohanim, will sprinkle salt on them." Okay, so these are the two relevant verses, and of course you're going to have a reference to salt in some other passages of the Bible as well, but you do not I believe in the Torah it doesn't clearly state it, but it does cover it. It does state it in different places. It says in Leviticus chapter 2 verse 13, it says, "Also you must put salt on every grain offering." And in Exodus 30:35 it says, "Also mix salt with this incense." And in Genesis 19:26 it talks about Lot's wife who became a pillar of salt. And I guess that's about Torah references of salt. That's the only three references of salt in the first 5 books. Is one in Genesis 14, which talks about the salt sea, the Dead Sea. One is in Genesis 19:26, which talks about the Lord's wife becoming a pillar of salt. And in Exodus 30:35, where it talks about mixing salt with incense. And Leviticus 2:13, it talks about salt on every grain offering. And it says, you must not forget to add salt, because it represents God's covenant or agreement with you. Always put salt on these offerings. And in Deuteronomy 29:23, it says, it talks about this land that was destroyed and covered with salt. Sodom, and it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah. So, okay, so these are the references. Now you might wonder, what is salt got to do with us in 2018? And let me tell you, that is one of the secrets of the priesthood. Remember who the commandment was given to. It was given to the priest. Always put salt. And let me tell you a little secret. This is a little secret that you now today know. I always carry salt with me. Always, wherever I go. In fact, on this trip, I had salt in my pockets. Like, it was so funny. I had little sachets of salt in my pocket, and I had my sea salt, my little sea salt container. I had it in my suitcase as well. I carry my own salt with me wherever I go. So there's one secret for you there. Why do I carry salt? Why? Because salt is readily available from everywhere. So why do I carry it? In fact, the nation I went to, they sell pink salt so cheap. They use a different name for it, but it's so cheap over there in rupees instead of dollars and pounds. So here is the reason why. This is what you need to do. The children of Israel, Bnai Israel. If you are Bnai Israel, and if you're not, if you want to join Bnai Israel, you're welcome to do so. So this is what you should do. You should take some salt, and you should put it in a little, make a little sachet of it. When I say sachet, I mean take a little piece of cloth, put salt into that cloth, wrap the cloth. It could be a cotton cloth. Don't put it in a No, don't use your Ziploc bags. That's not going to work as effectively. Use a cloth, because the properties of the salt need to come out, and you will learn how they come out. And you put it into a cloth, and the cloth is something that can, that can breathe, that allows the properties to come out. And you can take that little salt, like a handful of salt, stick it into the pouch or something of cloth, put it to your living room. Put it in your living room, on the maybe behind your couch, what you call we call them sofas in England, you call them couches over here. So you put it behind your couch and leave it there for a whole month, and then after the month keep replacing the salt, and make sure that you do that as religiously as possible. Now the other thing you do is you take salt, regular salt, it doesn't need to be sea salt, regular salt, and you make a line, how shall I say it? No, not a horizontal. Excuse me. You make a horizontal line in front of your doors, your exit gateways. Your gateway, both of your doors, your front and back door, they should have like a horizontal line drawn by the salt, front and back. Okay, so what's the purpose of this? When you put the salt in your house, inside your house, and also put some salt in your bathroom, your restrooms, and and what you do with those, you will use those to bathe. You can mix that salt into your little soap, into your little you put it in your sponge, in your little spongy thing, and you add some soap into that, and you add some liquid soap, and you can then add some salt into it, and you rub that over all your body. Okay, so here is the secret. What does that do? When you rub, I'll go backwards in reverse. When you rub the salt on your body, it removes all negativity and all negative influences and all impurities from your body. Boom, it's gone in a second. Once you wash it, it's all gone. Secondly, coming back to the doors, when you put salt on your doors, on your gates, it removes your enemies. It keeps your enemies out. Coming back to the room, when you put the salt in your room, in your living rooms, not in your bedroom, but in your living rooms, it keeps your enemies and it keeps your negativities out. It removes negativities and it brings prosperity. This salt that you put in your house will bring prosperity in your house and remove your enemies. So Your enemies will never think about coming to your house. Somebody who hates you, somebody who's jealous of you, they will stay away. That is the purpose of doing these things, mishpacha, because these are things that we practice in the East. We practice those a lot in the East, and Eastern people know about those practices, but they're not born out in ignorance. They are born from the scriptures that we read, but unfortunately, scripture does not go into detail of why these practices were prevalent and why we use salt. So this is the reason why we use salt. Now, I recommend it to privately to another person who's probably in the room. I told him that what you also do is you take a pouch of rice and you put the rice on one corner of your kitchen and you leave it there, and they're not to be consumed. Because what rice does, rice, grains of rice, whatever rice you eat, your normal white rice that you eat, you take a pouch, you take a handful and put it in a pouch in a little cloth wrap, and you stick it on one side of your kitchen, and you don't ever use that. That also will attract, it's like a magnet, it attracts wealth. And I want to take you back to the pages of the Bible which speaks about our sacrifices, which speaks about our cutting the harvest. Remember, Thanksgiving in America was derived from the harvest festival. In other words, people cut the harvest, then they were ready to give thanks to God. So we also have many festivals that are geared around the harvest. For instance, the Feast of Tabernacles is geared around the harvest. Feast of Pentecost is geared around the harvest, and even the Feast of Passover is geared around the barley harvest. Why the harvest? Because when you put some flour in a pouch and stick it to one side of your house, guess what that's going to do? It attracts wealth, it attracts well-being, it attracts money. It's a magnet. This is why we, the children of Israel, did those things. So it wasn't in ignorance. It wasn't, well, maybe and maybe not. This is why our people were immensely successful and immensely prosperous. Ask yourself today, where you are today, whether in North America or in Europe or in the East, ask yourself, why are you not prosperous today? Because you don't have a clue about these things. That's why. Think about it. If you had a clue about these things, you wouldn't be, you would be half as prosperous to where you are. Every person I speak to, every person that comes to me is always broken, and he needs help and he needs a way out. But why? Because clueless about our scriptures, clueless about our methods. So that's one of the things. Now, before you start going and ascribing some kind of spirituality to our stones that God given us, remember, God gave us each a stone, and He said, carry the stone with you and keep it safe. And the high priest wore those stones on his breastplate. Why? Have you ever asked yourself the question, why? These are not spiritual stones. Ignorant, Jewish theologians will tell you that. These stones are prosperity stones. They are ascribed to us as tribes, and they give us magnetism, prosperity, wealth, and all sorts of other things that are derived from those stones. They are supposed to be in our homes. They are supposed to be with you when you carry them out. But how many of you do that? I doubt if any of you even know about it, let alone do it. So I do. I carry them. So having said that, there are certain stones, a combination of which you should carry those stones. And Nathaniel, yep, I know you do, because we had a chat about that. So there are a combination of stones that they should be present in your homes, and you should be carrying them. And maybe I'll speak about them another day, or maybe we'll speak about it privately, because we don't give every information out publicly to every Tom, Dick and Harry out there, and who can come back and slander us. So I don't do that any longer. So having said that, you know who you are, you know which tribe you are. I want you to go and identify your stone. And identify your stone from which tribes you are. If you are a tribe of Judah, go identify your stone. This will help you, because then you must make sure that you carry that stone in your family. Put it in your home, put it in your wallet, carry it with you wherever you go. And it will bring abundance into your life. That I'll tell you this right over here. But you need to go, Judah if I'm not mistaken, I'll give you a little hint, look for sardius. And so you will do well with sardius. And majority of you are Judah. Some of you might be from the tribe of Binyamin. And for Binyamin, for you, the Benjamites, for you, I'll give you a clue up. You are amethyst. That's your stone. Amethyst, and Judah is sardius. So write it down. Go order these stones and collect them and put them in your wallets and put them in your homes. If you don't know what tribe you're from, I can tell you that you're likely going to be from two tribes. You're either likely from Judah. Adelia, you're likely from Judah. And you are from either from Benjamin or Judah. But Adelia, you are from Judah. Because I have seen you. I have, I know what you look like. And so I can tell you from here, you're Judah. Now, the rest of you who don't know, you can go and I'm not here to discuss our tribes. I'm not here to discuss our stones, what they are for, to the ignorant masses out there. I have given you some of the secrets of the priesthood. You can take it or you can leave it. I couldn't care less because I'm not going to hear and talk to the Gentiles about what is ours and what it means and what it is. It's not spiritual. It's got nothing to do with spirituality. Stones aren't spiritual things. They are physical things. They are objects. They carry a certain vibration, and they have a purpose and a rhyme and a reason why we carry those things. So I would suggest to you that they are absolutely, Rabbi Kefa, they are living. So those of us that understand stones and their purpose, I highly suggest that, since some of you already know what tribes you belong to, then if you're Judah, you get yourself your own stone. And if you're some other tribe, then I guess you get you go check it up. The Bible lists the stones. The Bible tells you which stones they are, and all you got to do is acquire them. I mean, you can go to eBay and you can order these stones. It's simple as that, and they're only a few dollars a piece. Unless you're going to order some stone that's expensive. I mean, I guess some of them might be, but I don't know if they're all as. I know some of them are fairly cheap. If you don't know your tribe, Lion Princess, I met you. You're the tribe of Judah, so you get your Judah stone, sardius, for yourself and for your husband, Ron. So you should do well. Make sure you put that stone on your shelf. Make sure you carry it in your wallet, a smaller version of it, or in your purse. You will do well. These are our stones. They have a practical purpose. You are Yael. You are the tribe of Benjamin. So that's the stone. You're Benjamin. So you will carry the Benjamite stone. That would be the amethyst stone for you. So even if you carried the wrong stone, for argument's sake, let's say you thought you were Judah and you were Benjamin, it doesn't matter because they are combined together. If you carried the sardius and you carried the amethyst, they have a combination effect. Because a lot of our people married into different tribes. Judah married into Benjamin, Benjamin married into Judah, and Benjamin married into Levites, etc., etc. So we have a combination effect. That's why the priest wore 12. That's why he had to carry the 12 stones. Again, this is again nothing to do with spirituality. It's all to do with physical reality. We have physical reality and we have spiritual reality. Don't listen to people who tell you, oh, they are fanciful spiritual stones. They're not. They're nothing to do with spirituality. They are physical. They have physical properties. They are living stones, and they give you things. Meaning, they are aligned with heavens and the earth, and they possess certain powers. It's not superstition, and they have meaning, and those meanings need to be, this is why we don't speak about these things so much, because all you get from the Gentiles is oh, superstition, oh this, oh that. They're ignorant people around us, and we don't need to speak to the ignorant. I'm speaking to those of you with knowledge who want to acquire understanding of God and His ways, and God deals with us on a physical plane, not in a spiritual plane alone. There are two parallel worlds. There's a spiritual, there's a physical. We are more concerned right now about our physical beings. And spiritual, when you die, you can worry about spiritual when you die. It's not right now, that shouldn't be your worry about spiritual side of things. Right now, your worry and your concern In fact, you shouldn't be worrying at all, because let me take you to a passage of Job, and this is where most of our people are today. In the book of Job, his name is Ayub in the Hebrew, chapters 3 verse 25, it says, "What I feared has come upon me, what I dreaded has happened to me." This is half of your problem today, Bnai Yisrael. If you are Bnai Yisrael, this is your problem. In fact, even if you are not Bnai Yisrael, this is your problem. Is that what you fear will come upon you. Meaning, what you think most of the time, that, oh, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, it will happen to you. Why? Because you are attracting it. You are making it so. Because you are so focused on it, on the wrong things, that the wrong things happen to you. So, what does it teach us? Do not focus on the wrong things. Focus on the good things. Renewal of your mind. When Rabbi Shaul, when Paul of Tarsus, who was a Pharisee, learned man, when he spoke about renewing of your mind, this is what he was referring to. Is don't focus your mind on the worry and on the negative and on the fear part. Remove fear. See, the letter of John, Yochanan, speaks about removal of fear. It says love drives out fear. So a lot of our people have fear, and fear will bring in more fear, and it will gradually destroy you, and it will gradually limit you, and it will make you slowly poor and poor and poorer. Why? Because you're dwelling on fear, not on love. Love, on the other hand, is from God. Love is from God, and everything around us, everything dwells in love. So, this is my take on life, is that we should deal with every individual on this planet. Doesn't matter what religious beliefs they carry, doesn't matter their orientations, we should deal with every individual with love, because the Master Jesus said, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." So we need to remove ourselves from this, judge and jury and condemning everybody that doesn't believe the same as us. I think that is so very, very wrong. So very, very wrong to do that. We are not to focus on those kind of things. Our energies, our lives should be focused on the good, and on the good that God has given us, and the greatness that we can achieve. Now remember, the Parsha that today we are looking at, the Parsha is Parsha's Vayishlah in a nutshell. I don't want to talk about, the nuances of this and the nuances of that. You can sit in a synagogue and be bored out of death for that. That's fine. But the Parsha, in sum total, speaks about the peace between Jacob and his brother Esau. Esau was trying to kill his brother, and then in the end what happens? They reconcile, they come to a peaceful situation, and the Parsha concludes, it concludes with a detailed account of Esau and his wives and children and grandchildren and their histories, and where they lived, etc., etc., and the list of kings that ruled Edom, the list of 8 kings that ruled Edom. That's what the Parsha speaks about. Within this Parsha, as you know, there is an angel that wrestles with Jacob, and I believe that story where it gives name to Jacob is found in the Parsha Genesis. Let me go to that. Genesis 32. Yeah, Genesis 32, I believe. It says, therefore to this day, it talks about this, the shrinking of the sinew muscle, the hip muscle. But before that, it talks about Jacob wrestling with an angel. And it says that in verse 26 it says, and he said, let me go, for the day breaks. But he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So Jacob causes this angel, or asks this angel to bless him, and he says to the angel in verse 27, says, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, you shall no longer be called Jacob. Your name henceforth will be called Israel, as a prince with power from Elohim, with power from God, and you shall overcome all men. Now, Let me ask you this. How many of you are overcoming all men today? Anybody here in the room that's overcoming all men? And living the actual promise given to Jacob by the angel of the Lord, who of course happens to be, as most of you know, not an angel of RSAHK, as most Jews and Jewish theologians and rabbis will tell you. Nothing to do with angel of RSAHK. This angel, by the way, as you know, is a personification of the Messiah come down, Yahweh himself. So I think, there's crickets in the room. So if you're not overcoming all men, that means you're not living up to the potential that the angel was giving. Angel of the Lord being Yahweh himself, he was giving a blessing, and he was saying that you will overcome all men. But what I see in North America a lot of the times is some of these ignorant, misguided people standing on New York streets and Chicago streets. I just went through Chicago, Chicago just not so long ago, and they're just standing there in street corners shouting down at people. That's the ignorance, level of ignorance. And have they overcome all men? Absolutely not. They haven't overcome anybody. No, not even themselves. So we need to understand that you have been given immense power and authority, because you are the sons of Jacob and you are the daughters of Jacob. Sons and daughters of Jacob, therefore the sons and daughters of Abraham. Therefore called to salvation not by choice but by inheritance. So you are sons and you are daughters of children of God. So therefore you should be mighty powerful, and if you're not exercising your power, then something is wrong. So you need to go back and you need to really check. And as I gave you some things earlier, if you were missed in the room, is that those things you need to apply in your lives. They will help you. And they will help you with that. And also I'd like to say that those of you came in late, from next week we will start our teachings from 7 o'clock Central Time, and that will be 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Therefore, this will allow you more time. We will be able to finish our classes a bit earlier, and this will allow you a bit more time to spend with your families. And I think that I would like to take you to a message of Jesus of Nazareth, because in one of the chapters, as you know, that we had a lot of incidents in the Bible where the Pharisees they wrestled with Jesus of Nazareth. Yeshua of Nazareth was wrestling with them on many occasions, and they disliked him for many different reasons. As you read through the New Testament pages, in Matthew chapters 12 verse 1, it says at that time Jesus went through the grain fields. Yeshua went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." That's one of the passages that you will find. Let me just open that up in the Hidden Truths Hebraic Scrolls. Let me open it up. Let me close. Let me open my Brit Chadasha, my New Testament scriptures, and then I'll take you there in Matthew chapter 12, verse 1. And then Yehoshua, he answers them and he says, when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Behold, your disciples do that which is not permitted to do upon the Sabbath day." Here comes the religious bigots, by the way. These are the religious bigots that come, the religious policemen, and they want to tell you that something is not right, something is not permitted, when that actually is permitted. And what does the Son of David say? What does he say, the Son of Man? He says, the Son of God. He turns around and says, "But he said to them, have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and they that were with him, how he entered into the base of Yahweh, and did eat the lachem hapanaim." He ate the showbread, which was not permitted in the Torah for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the Kohanim, the priesthood. Or have you not read in the Torah how that on the Sabbath day the Kohanim in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple, the priesthood profaned the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say to you that in this place is one greater than the Beit HaMikdash. There is in this place one greater than the temple. But if ye had known what this means, I desire loving kindness and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. So, Mishpacha, the religious police, the religious bigots, those called rabbis, and those called priests and pastors, and the deacons and whatnot, not everybody, but a lot of those people will be always with a finger pointing at you, condemning you. But the Master Jesus made it very plainly clear that this is not how it is intended for living. Now, somebody asked me yesterday, I had a little conversation with somebody yesterday, and they asked me about a relationship, whether they should pursue that relationship or whether they shouldn't pursue that relationship. And maybe this is an answer to your prayer as well. Some of you are seeking an answer to your relationship question, and here's the answer to that question today. By the will of God, is that every relationship should be based on love, and love alone should dictate whether you follow a relationship, whether you don't follow a relationship. I told the person concerned that a man can keep the Sabbath perfectly, yet be guilty of sin according to God for not being right with people around him. So I said, be very circumspect of people who come in a religious garb, because they will likely be the finger pointers and the bigots in our society. Because it is not about the perfect Sabbath keepers, it is about that person which judges. When I say judges, I don't mean to sit as judge and jury. I mean that he decides the people he meets based on love or not on love. So if the person, I said to this person that if you can love this person, if the answer is yes to that question, then your relationship can go ahead. And if you don't love this person, then fine, your relationship has to take another course. James in the room is saying that I would like to give esteem, James B119 is coming from, I would like to give esteem to the Most High Yahweh for helping me to be able to go see my kids and their mom, and we were able to talk about everything that happened and to work things out, and everyone was able to say how they feel and get understanding, and for them to know I am following the Most High God Yahweh, and I am giving esteem to the Most High God Yahweh for helping me be able to make this trip and bring shalom to my family. Baruch Hashem Yahweh for that. Baruch Hashem the Master Jesus. I'm very happy for you, James, that you were able to make peace with your family. It is very important that all of us present listening to this recording, whether live or non-live, we make peace with our families, whether it's on Thanksgiving or whether it's on Christmas. Christmas is the next a big event that will come to the US and I guess Western world. So my suggestion to you, as it was last week, is the same this week, is to go make peace with your families so that you may live in peace and you may live in prosperity with the things that I have taught you, because these are so very, very important that we live in peace and we pursue peace, because the Master Yeshua, Jesus, speaks about pursuing peace. He talks about blessed are the peacemakers. He didn't say blessed are the argumenters and the blessed are the debaters and the blessed are the ones who win their argument. He said blessed are the peacemakers. It is better to be wrong than to be, it's better to be wrong and to live in peace, and better to be right and live in turmoil. So with that, I leave you, I love you, and I leave you. May you be blessed in the name of the Most High God that we serve. Baruch Hashem Yahweh, may His kingdom, may His glory be forever and forever. Amen. Ve Amen. Over to you, Rabbi Kefa.
Todah HaKohim, Todah for your great instruction on our history and who we are and how we're supposed to live. If I can be heard, can I get a 1? I want to make sure I'm coming in crystal clear before we continue on. For you, welcome back, by the way, HaKohim, to the shores of North America, the land of the free, home of the brave, Baruch Hashem. I always got to put that out there. But really happy to have you back, really humbled to have you back, and just really grateful to have you in our midst, so that we can continue to get understanding on how we need to live, and thus likewise go out and do. I think that's so very important for us to go out and execute. This is why, the Shabbat is such a very important time for all of us to come together, not only as a family in this forum, but within our own families as well, to come together, enjoy and spend quality time with your families, and then spend quality time with your families as you get on with the necessaries of being dispersed and scattered in these great shepherd nations that we have been placed in for a vital purpose and a great abundance as well for all of us. And I truly believe that we all have to do, and we need to continue to do, and we need to always have this kind of mindset to where we understand is that we'll never fully understand, but we're always trying to understand. Think about what I just said. You never fully understand, but you're always trying to understand. Yeah, I think that's a very important mindset to have. A very, very important mindset to have, because you don't want to get complacent, and you don't want to fall into that the wastebasket of complacency and of conformity, to where you just you meet a certain level and then you just stop. Don't be satisfied with just getting the hidden truth be break scrolls. This is what I'm noting with the prison ministry. Their utopia stops at getting the hidden truth be break scrolls, the greatest Bible, in my opinion, in the whole of the world. They give you proper understanding with proper history and heritage at place. But they just stop there. Because I'm noting that the correspondence is only gimme, 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 and gimme, gimme, gimme. If your name is Jimmy, no offense, but there's a lot of gimme, and my name is Jimmy, so give me. I mean, what's the purpose behind all that at the end of the day? There is no testimony, there's no gratitude of thanks, there is no, that's the utopia. They have the book and then that's it. But it doesn't stop there. You get this understanding, this wealth of knowledge before you, and then you begin to apply it. You have your history, the facts on the ground about your history, who you are, but then you must take the application to us in our great and rich history, and begin to take it and begin to understand it, and then begin to apply it. Begin to learn the lessons from our history, so that you can pave the way going forward for today and then for the yet future ahead. You are fully in control of what happens to yourself. You are fully in control. And Hakohen mentioned something, and this Parsha does spell it out as well, as we talk about name changing. And I believe sometimes in our lives, whatever your given name is, you're that person. Now, the percentage of the time you are that person, opposed to the percentage of the time that you are the name that God gave you. You are Israel, opposed to being Jimmy, Sam, Harry, Lamont, Simon, Bill, Will, Lolita, Shaquan, Shaquisha. You see, you have to ask yourself, at what time am I Israel, and at what times am I just my given name? And then you have to, and what comes into play here, and what justifies that is basically, how you feel, or what you're creating, or what's going on, what's the situation, at what circumstance. So circumstance is like the fuel. Situation is fuel. And Hakohen mentioned it a little bit, but today I'm going to talk about fear, because even fear is the fuel. How many of you in this room have a fear? You have a fear. It could be anything. How many of you in this room, you have some sort of fear? You fear something. You have a fear of, I don't care what it could be. It doesn't have to be an animal. You could fear a certain food. I'm going to read an article to you in a minute out of Forbes. And I would encourage y'all to read this article about this man, this comedian. He was an IT executive over at Intel. And his fear wasn't an animal, but his fear was public speaking. He didn't like to speak to people in public. He feared that. And he gives he gives you his history. He gives you his story on how he conquered his fear. You see, fear is fuel. For those of you who don't fear anything, I firmly believe you may be living in a fictitious world. Because when you look at our patriarchs, they all had fear. When you look at the history of our great patriarchs, they all feared something. And we can go back to the very beginnings, which I think we should, by the way. Let's go there. We can go back to our time and to the time that our forefathers was even in the garden. Let's go to that scenario. We all know the story, but let's go to that scenario. Let's go to that scenario. Let's look at Genesis chapter 3. Again, we'll start reading at verse 9. Genesis chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. We'll read that. And Yahweh, again, I'm reading from the Hidden Truth Hebraic Scrolls. If you don't have this study Bible, please get it. It really enhance and really just light up your library for sure. And you can purchase it on Amazon.com. Also, you can purchase it on Lulu.com as well for you who are listening via YouTube. Genesis chapter 3, verse 9. And Yahweh Elohim called to Adam. Look at Abram. Abram wasn't even in existence at the time. I don't even think Abram was a sperm count at that time. And Yahweh Elohim called to Adam, and said to him, where are you? Now this is the creator of the heavens and the universes. And look what he always does. He always asks questions. That's instructional as well. Ask questions, even though you may already have the answer. But ask questions, because the reason why you need to ask questions of individuals is that you are all students of nature. And you're trying to understand people. Just like the Creator is trying to, he's trying to teach us something here. And he's trying to take us to another level. But again, always ask questions. I think that's important. Genesis chapter 3, verse 10. And he said, now listen to what what he says here. And he said, I heard your sound in the garden. Now Adam, many times, the Master Yahweh conversed and was in the garden with them and had great conversations. Maybe they played, they had great conversations and great talks, and was always around and present. But now all of a sudden, in Genesis chapter 3, verses 10, he said, I heard your sound in the garden, and I was afraid. And I was afraid. This is the first time in our history where we see this word, afraid and fear, is here, staring us in the face through the father of us all, Ha-Adam. All of a sudden, he loses his force field, that I call it, and then he realizes, because, the slippery slope. Now, again, if we continue on, remember we talked about circumstance and situation. Now, could we not say, those of you who have read the story, if you haven't, I would encourage you to go back and read the story, Genesis chapter 2, chapter 3. Go and read the story of what happened. Everybody world over knows the story. Is that Adam, he realized that he did something wrong. He realizes that, things are not the same anymore. I don't have that force field around me anymore. Something's different here, and I don't like it. So he realizes this. He realizes that the mistake was made. That he had been given something by his wife. And so, what is the first thing that he does when the situation occurs? What happens? When the circumstance happens, what happens? The first thing that brews up in him is fear. Think about that. And at the same time, I want you to imagine situations, and I want you to meditate on situations that have occurred, circumstances that have occurred in your life. What's the first thing that rose up in your life? I tell you, our history is very rich. We have a rich history. Great matriarchs, great patriarchs. We can learn from them that they were human beings as well, just as you and I are human beings. Now, why not at that moment, as we Monday morning quarterback the situation, why not at the moment that, Adam, he realizes, okay, there was a mistake was made, then wouldn't it be prudent and important for me to stand up for the mistake that was made? Stand up and face the consequences. Stand up and deal with the repercussions. Yes, this has happened. And then, the Imhokmah she gave me this morning. She said we need to, first when we go back and we look at the verse there, it says that, first Adam, he heard the sound. He said, I heard your sound in the garden. I heard your sound. So first, let's examine this. Let's break this down. Let's dissect this. First, Adam, he heard. And isn't that the same pattern that we need to do today? First, we need to hear. We don't need to hear ignorance. We need to hear the facts. I know I want the facts. How many of you want fiction? You want to, first you need to hear. That's key. The creator of the heavens and the universes, he created human beings with what? 2 ears. First, he heard. And then when he heard, and then he said what? And I was afraid. So he heard, and then he fear set in. Afraid is just synonymous for what? Fear. So then fear set in. Right? So what came to me this morning was, for us to, now let me finish reading the rest of that verse before I go into what was said there in verses 10 there from the Hidden Truth and Great Scrolls of Genesis chapter 3. You see, I heard your sound in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, and I hid myself. This pattern, by the Father of us all, is the same pattern that's been played on generation after generation after generation, leading all the way up to 2018 today. Because whether you want to acknowledge it or not, all of you have some kind of fear. You fear something. Some of you fear your husband. Some of you fear your wife. Some of you fear your boss. Some of you fear a tarantula. Some of you have the fear of speaking to people. You fear that. We all have some sort of fear. But what I want you to understand today is fear is a natural emotion. It's built in within us. But the question is, what do you do with the fear that you do have, whatever that fear may be? Some of you fear money. Some of you fear being poor. Some of you fear health, bad health. Whatever your fear may be, you first of all, you need to acknowledge that there's a fear. You see, because what I want you to understand today is that fear is literally fuel. And you're going to learn this from one of our great patriarchs, the father of our family, Jacob. Fear is literally fuel. That can be used now. How many of you know, I heard Hakohen, I got a good laugh about Hakohen and his rinky-dink taxi trying to get to the airport. Hakohen will tell you the importance of fuel and lack thereof. Because if the rinky-dink taxi didn't have fuel, it wouldn't go, and it wouldn't make its destination. Do you see the lesson in that? It's such a wonderful lesson in a circumstance that occurred. A real-life circumstance. And you all, believe it or not, you all have real-life circumstances. Maybe you're not driving a rinky-dink taxi. Maybe you're having a flat tire. But you all have circumstances. Maybe just the engine just stopped running on it. But fuel is needed. It's important for us to have fuel so that we can reach our destination, like with the rinky-dink taxi. The taxi may be rinky-dink, but the taxi got Hakohen to his final destination, which was, for his story, was what? Was the airport. Baruch Hashem, Master Jesus of Nazareth. Got him to the airport, rinky-dink or not. Luxury class or rinky-dink. the vehicle or the mode of transportation got HaKohen to where he needed to go, because it had fuel. And when it ran out of fuel, then there was no moving. And this is what you'll find when a situation occurs, and then that emotion or that energy of fear will show itself. It'll present itself to you, and fear is staring you in the face. Is that sometimes we become like that deer, right? When the headlights are on. And believe me, we're seeing many deer over here in my neck of the woods now. It's time for them to come out and do their necessaries. But you see, it's like a deer. And when the headlights are on, what does the deer do? Anybody tell me, when the headlights are on at night and the deer sees the headlights, what does the deer do? Anybody? Everybody up? Anybody ever have that experience of running into a deer at night? And you got your headlights on your vehicle? Jacob says they freeze up in fear. Well, I don't proclaim to be a deer. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night. So I really don't know if the deer is freezing up because he's fearful, but I do know that the deer just stops. He freezes. He stops. And this is one of the things that happens when this characteristic of fear shows itself to a lot of folks, is that they stop. Remember, we talked about fuel, but fear can also freeze. How many of you know what I'm talking about this morning? Fear can also freeze you, and it'll stop you, it'll prevent you. It can be that stumbling block that prevents you from completing your mission, i.e. getting to the airport, i.e. becoming that successful businessman, i.e. becoming that wonderful husband, i.e. becoming that wonderful wife, whatever it may be, that goal, that agenda, that motivation that you have this goal and you want to reach this thing and you're trying to get there, but what's stopping you? Most of the time is fear. And we see it from the very beginnings of time, even in the garden. Adam, he tells the master Yahweh, he say, I was fearful. And then he said, because I was fearful, I hid myself. So hear and do not hear and hide. And this is one of the greatest lessons that Jacob teaches us in this wonderful history of our forefather Jacob. He heard the promises. He knew of the promises that was promised to him. He was commanded by Master Yahweh, okay, pack up your things. Now it's time for you to go back home. Take your family, all your belongings. You're going to make this journey. You're going to become very successful. I'm going to be with you. Now all of a sudden Jacob said what? Oh my goodness. We're going to get that there in a minute. But before we do that, Mishpachah, I have a little joke of the day as well. And it's kind of apropos to what we're talking about as well. The joke of the day is this. A pastor was doing a teaching for children and began to ask them these questions. If I sold my house and my car, had a big garage sale, and gave all my money to the church, would that get me into heaven? He asked the children. No, the children all answered. Then the pastor goes on to say, if I cleaned the church every day, mowed the lawn, and kept everything neat and tidy, would that get me into heaven? Again, the answer from the children was no. Then the pastor goes on to say, well, then if I was kind to all animals and gave candy to all children and loved my wife, would that get me into heaven? Again, the children answered, no. Pastor goes on to continue. He goes on to say this, well, then how can I get into heaven? He asked the children. And a 5-year-old boy shouted, you gotta be dead. What a great bit of understanding from children, right? You gotta be dead to get to heaven. You think about that story for a minute. You think about that little joke, but yet it's so true. And I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing here as we talk about what that 5-year-old said to the pastor. Well, you gotta be dead to get to heaven. You see? But think about this for a minute. I want you to really think about this for a minute. One of the greatest things today that people fear, and maybe this was you at one time, and you know what? You look at the actions and they spend their whole lives trying to avoid what? They fear death. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Maybe you know someone like that. Maybe that someone is even you. Is that they have a big fear of death. So they spend their whole life trying to preserve themselves or trying to maybe put themselves in cryo so that they have a fear. They actually fear death. And I'm going to tell you is that the fear of death. And now, let's take you to our history as well. You look at our great patriarchs, and I guarantee you, when you go back and read some of our history, you'll see it as well, is that our great patriarchs did the same thing. Isaac did it. Abraham did it. They had a fear of dying. Mishpachah, is this newsflash to any of you in this room? They literally had a fear of dying. You don't believe me? Go and read the stories of their beautiful wives when they were on their sojourn into these different countries. And the reason why they would tell these leaders, these kings, that, oh, this woman that is my wife, she is my sister. Why did they say these things when they were questioned on these things? Because they had a fear that the rulers would kill them, right? They had a fear of that. They didn't want to die. So they said these things. Come on. I can remember when I was a Christian, I had that fear of death. I feared dying because, I didn't know what was going to happen after you died. Who does, right? But that was my thing. I really had no clue on what was going to happen. And I knew what the Christian pastor was telling me. It didn't make no sense. So that even made me more fearful. How many of you know what I'm talking about this morning, or this evening, or this afternoon? Is that the mumbo jumbo that I was getting for religions even made me more fearful. I was like, how could this happen? This logically doesn't make any sense. Beam me up, Scotty. That stuff is only in Hollywood. This is not logical. It just doesn't make any sense. Fear of the unknown. Fear of not knowing. HaKohen, the son of Aaron, called it ignorance, because you just don't know any better. But I like to be in the know. How many of you in that category as well? You'd like to be in the category of the know. I want to know. Put me in the category of know, Alex, for 500. I want to be in the category of the knowing, not the category of the not known and the unknown. You all need to have a hunger to be in this kind of category. This is what's going to give you truly an abundance of a life. Is when you can understand and recognize and really know how to handle fear. Because believe me, every one of you in this room and listening via YouTube are going to have to deal with fear. It's going to stare you in the face sometime or another. But that's reality. Fear is going to come to you. The question is, how do you deal with it? Are you going to use fear for fuel, or is fear going to freeze you? Wow. And most of the time, fear freezes. Shabbat shalom to you, Rabbi Yosef Yoten. Most of the time, fear freezes you, and you can never accomplish the goal. You can never accomplish your dreams because you're still on this hiccup, this stumbling block of fear. Oh, I have a fear of this. But the best thing to do with fear is to do what? Is to face it. It's to stare fear in the face and face it. You don't believe me? Let's hear it from this man. Let me tell you about this man. Maybe some of you know. How many of you follow comedians? I don't really follow comedians, but I saw this story in Forbes. Let me post this for you. Maybe you can have a look at it as well, so you can really see that this is a real story of a real life human being that's just trying to get on in life and be successful and be happy. This man wanted to be happy. He wanted, you know, what a better job to have, to be happy, than to make other people laugh and happy. What a great job to have. It's the way you're making other people laugh and be happy as they go through, you know, this life with some fears and other emotions that are not positive. They come to this place, they pay money to hear a laugh. Can you believe that? And you can make money off just making people laugh. People will come and listen to you. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm going to post this for you so you guys can take a look at it. This guy. Interesting guy. So this guy is interviewed here. Let me give you his name here. Let's get into the story. This guy name is Dan Naiman. Dan Naiman. Now he's a comedian. Now Dan Naiman's dad is Indian and his mother is from Japan. Dad is from India and his mother is from Japan. Now once Naiman introduced his ethnic background, he launches into one joke after another, as well as impersonations of politicians and athletes. He usually brings down the house. Naiman has performed at inaugural events in Washington, D.C. and to thousands of people around the world. Naiman markets himself as 100% clean comic. Wow. A 100% clean comic. How refreshing. There isn't one road to comedy stardom, but Naiman's journey is a bit more unusual than the standard comedy career. Now get this. Until 2007, Naiman was working as a senior engineer at Intel. He ran demonstrations on stage for some of Intel's top executives. Think about this. Now, I'm telling you about Naiman because guess what? Naiman had a fear of communicating to others. He had a fear of speaking in public. Now, this interviewer goes on to say that I recently had a conversation with Naiman about comedy and public speaking. During his corporate career, Naiman was terrified of public speaking. This man was terrified of public speaking. Although Naiman was able to perform his role at Intel very well, the days and weeks before a performance were, well, in his words, hell. Anyone who has been nervous about giving a presentation knows the feeling. I have a natural low heart rate, but during a demonstration, I could feel my heart pounding out of my chest, said Naiman. Naiman credits comedy for giving him confidence on stage. Comedy. But after talking to Naiman at length about how he overcame his fear, I realized that the road to comedy success applies to anyone who wants to conquer the fear of public speaking. Now Naiman gives some steps on what he did. First step was said, Naiman says to do what? He says to take small steps. Comics don't start out forming 1 or 2 hour routines for thousands of people. Naiman started by taking comedy classes. My goodness. And what does comedy classes do? It puts you right in front of people. You see? Facing your fear. Don't let fear freeze you. Use your fear as fuel. Naiman did it. Dan Naiman. Now he's a comedian, making other people laugh. So he begins to take comedy classes. What do comedians do? They stand in front of people, whether it's one person, or many people, or thousands of people. When he began performing at clubs, Naiman, like most comics, will perform a 3-minute set. The sets gradually got longer, to 5 to 10 minutes, then 10 minutes to 15 minutes, etc., until he started headlining. Nanan's confidence would grow with every set he did. With every set, and he did it frequently. Look at that. How did his confidence grow? Is he kept on doing it. And he's going to tell you this in a minute. Nanan performs 80 to 100 times a year. Now he does. Now, what does he say he does? He says, take every opportunity to present or speak in front of a group, and even if it's only for a few minutes. Now, what does Nanan say? Nanan says, first, take small steps. Second, he says, stay positive. The small step was what? Okay, small step. First of all, maybe. Now, listen to what he says here. Nanan says, positive thinking. Listen to what Nanan says here. Nanan says, positive thinking and self-affirmations really do work. I've looked in the mirror and said, I'm not going to let you fail. I've actually done it, Nanan said. Think about the awful things many of us say to ourselves before a presentation. I hate giving a presentation. I'm nervous. I stink. Remember, the son of Aaron told you the same thing in some instruction. Last Shabbat, and maybe even the Shabbat before that, is to look in the mirror. Nanan did. He said, I looked in the mirror and said, I'm not going to let you fail. He looked in the mirror. The first person that you have to deal with and using fear as fuel is yourself. But if you come with the negativity like Nanan talks about, he said, what's the first thing people think about? Is that negativity comes in. I hate giving a presentation. I'm nervous. I stink at giving presentations. Then he heard this phrase right here, this saying. He heard this. You must change your inner conversation if you hope to change what the audience sees. I'll say that again. You must change your inner conversation if you hope to change what the audience sees. That's heavy. All of you should be writing that one down. You should change your inner conversation. How many of you curse with yourself internally? You should be. You should change your inner conversation. You are, whether you believe it or not. Oh, Rabbi, Kefa, I didn't know I could talk to myself. Yes, you can. You guys talk to yourselves every day. You need to recognize it for what it is. You need to change. I'm going to read it again because this is heavy stuff. This is heavy stuff. You must change your inner conversation if you hope to change what the audience sees. A famous pastor, Joel Osteen. How many of you know this guy? He's here in Texas, Houston, by the way. The famous pastor, Joel Osteen, speaks in front of 40,000 people a week at Houston's Lakewood Church, and up to 70 million on television. Yet, when he took over the ministry upon his father's death, he thought he was too shy to speak publicly. In his new bestseller, Every Day a Friday, Osteen writes, believe you can go places you've never been before. Stretch into a new way of thinking. Stretch into greater vision for the possibilities of your life. Think positive. Positive thinking made a difference for Joel and Nanan's, and it will work for you. Positive thinking. It's all how you think. Think positive. Deal with the inner man. You must change your inner conversation if you hope to change what the audience sees. You can take that and apply that in your lives today. Change your inner conversation. And your audience could be who? It could be your husband. It could be your wife. It could be your boss. It could be your dog. It could be your co-workers. It could be your friends. That could be your audience. How many of you in this room even, you'd like to be a comedian? I think we should all have some comedic skills about us. It's because we should always be trying to make people laugh, put a smile on their face instead of a frown. Why do you think the son of Aaron tells jokes? What does that do? What does humor do? This past week, here in America they celebrated Thanksgiving. I celebrated Thanksgiving. And there was a study that the news media was talking about. The scientists did this study on the importance of gratitude and how gratitude actually has been equated to longevity. Scientists are proving this, is that the more gracious you are, the more healthier you'll become. The more longevity that you give to yourself. Remember, Hakohi, the son of Aaron, talked about positive forces. Gratitude is one of them. Staying positive is another. Positivity. Positive thinking. Assessing and really looking at that man in the mirror. That's very important. And realize and really understand that person, that man in the mirror. And really assess the man in the mirror and see where those fears are. You see, because those fears right now, this day, could be freezing you. Instead of you using those fears for fuel. Some of you fear a relationship. You fear that. You didn't know what to call it before. Oh, Rabbi, that's just apprehension. No. 3 years of apprehension? Come on, who are you kidding? You fear a relationship. Oh, that's just apprehension. I'm just being cautious. No, call it what it is, Mishpahah. It's fear. You fear that. You fear a relationship. On whatever. You fear stepping out and going to get that new job. You fear starting that business. You see? You fear that. And you need to deal with it. Call it what it is. It's fear. Now, am I going to use the fear for fuel, or am I going to use that fear to freeze me and just totally stop me? And majority of folks today, they allow the fear to freeze them, and they never get on. They never reach that goal. They never reach their desires. They never taste the abundance of life. My goodness. Y'all forbid that's any of you in this room or listening via YouTube. But you continue to strive for that abundance of life. And you never reach abundance because you're always trying to reach it. Baruch Hashem, Master Jesus of Nazareth. Because when you get that more abundance, then guess what? There's more abundance. And then when you reach that more abundance, then guess what? There's even more abundance. And then the more abundance becomes more abundantly. And then the more abundantly becomes even more abundantly. Baruch Hashem, Master Jesus of Nazareth. So it just never stops. It's perpetual. But at the same time, what's the other end of the stick? The other end of the stick, it can go both ways. And some are just perpetually paralyzed by fear. And they never get on. And their life never moves. So I would encourage all of you, like Naaman did. Now Dan Naaman. I'm gonna look up some of his jokes. He says his jokes are 100% clean. That's what he's touted for. So I'm gonna look up some of his jokes on YouTube, see if I can find some of them. See his stage performance. You all should be striving to make people laugh, make people happy. Not the other end of the stick. But you must come to a realization of who you are, your inner man, those inner conversations. How many of you have inner conversations? Sometimes I feel like maybe I'm talking to myself. How many of you have inner conversations? Any of you have it? Is it just me having? I know Akohin has inner conversations. He tells me all the time. He talks to himself. He has inner conversations. You have to have these inner conversations. So what's going on? And I don't want you to put it out on Jump Street. You don't have to text it in. But you need to ask yourself, what's going on with these inner conversations that I'm having with myself? Because those inner conversations are what's being manifested in your present world, in today's time. That's what's being manifested as you look at the man, as you look at the woman in the mirror. So now let's delve into our Parsha, because I think that's important for us to do so, and learn a lesson from Jacob. You see, sometimes, and I hope you apply this every day, is you have to ask yourself. I want you to ask yourself right now. Here's this instruction right now. What's my name? Say it. I want all of you to say it right now. Say it. And say it. Say it with enthusiasm. What's my name? Oh, that sounds kind of funny. Because I watched a couple of movies like this. They were saying this, and they were dealing with some under the sheets matters. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But you need to ask yourself, what's my name? Ask yourself, what's my name? Am I Lamont today? Or am I Israel? Just like you'll see in times in our history, in our great history, when we look at the history of Jacob, sometimes the Master Yahweh would call Jacob Jacob, and at other times the Master Yahweh would call Jacob Israel. What's my name? What name am I giving myself this day? What's my name today? Am I Oliver today, or am I Israel? Am I Abrahu today, or am I Israel? Am I Dan today, or am I Israel? Am I Sally today, or am I Israel? What's my name? Remember that. Remember to ask yourself that question. What's my name? What name are you giving yourself? Because we know name has power to it, right? Name commands power. So the question is, again, what name are you giving us? And I'll remember this statement as well. Hear and do. Do not hear and hide. You hear and do. Now I want you to truly examine Jacob, because Jacob followed this principle. And even he had to kind of correct himself. He he had that moment of fear, but he used the fear as fuel. Because at the end of the day, and you know, Hakohim, the son of Aaron, he taught you this, and I hope you caught it. Now, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind putting it out there, I'd like to hear from you today. What is your goal today? What is your goal? And write it out, because write it out on paper, preferably blue ink, on a piece of paper. Write it out. There's power in doing that, but we can't do that in this form right now. So if you would, text it. What is your goal? What today? I know you may have many goals, but what is that number one goal? You see, because you need to start telling yourself this so that you can hear it. We're going right back. We're following these same patterns. Adam, first what did Adam do? He heard the voice of Master Yahweh. He heard it. Then when he heard it, he did what? He said, then I was afraid. You see, first you need to begin to hear yourself. What is your goal? Anybody want to write it down? Anybody want to take a shot at it? Anybody? Okay, I'll take a shot at it too. I want to be a millionaire. That's my goal. I want to be a millionaire. What's your goal, Mishpah? Don't be shy. Maybe some of you are still working on your goals. You all should be having goals. Abrahu says financial freedom, my own boss. What are your goals? There's no wrong answer for your goals, but I tell you what, the only crippling answer for your goals is not to have any. What kind of life, what kind of abundance of a life is it? And you don't have goals so you can hear yourself. When you look at yourself in the mirror, think about that. It's crippling. You're freezing your own self because you have no goals. Where do I want to go? I don't want to go anywhere. I want to be a millionaire. I'm down. I'm stamping it. I'm claiming it. And I tell myself that in the mirror. You need to hear yourself saying these things. You all need to have some kind of goal, Mishpah. If you don't have a goal, you need to create a goal for yourself. Create one. You all say you're having these inner conversations with yourself. What are these inner conversations about? What are you talking about? Tiptoeing through the tulips? You all need to have, like, serious goals. You all have this central nervous system, this brain that's super powerful. It's more powerful than any supercomputer in the world. We need to start giving it super powerful tasks. Why are we giving it these mundane, simple tasks? Our brain. You're just giving it these little simple tasks. Oh yeah, today I'm just gonna go to the store. I'm telling you, you need to have goals. You need to have goals that are super powerful, so that the super powerful brain, this awesome supercomputer, better than any supercomputer in the world, that it can work for you. You need to put it to work. You really need to put it to work, Mishpah, and have goals. And then hear yourself, your inner man. You don't have to tell nobody else. But you begin to tell your inner man, look, you look at the mirror and say, look, these are my goals. What did Dan Nanan say? He said he had some affirmations. And he would say them to himself in the mirror. Because he had a fear of speaking to people, my goodness. This is a man who knew himself. He knew his shortcomings. This is an engineer at Intel, and he's afraid to talk to people? Go figure. We all have our fears. But we all must conquer our fears. We must use fear as fuel. But first you must realize that you have fears. You may be calling them something else. Oh, that's just, that's just hereditary, it runs in the family. Well, you need to stop all of that. Deal with it, call it what it is, so that you can begin to conquer it. But the more you pay tiddlywinks to it and say, oh yeah, and you know how you'll know that you're just fooling yourself is because you haven't moved from point A to point B in many years, and you're still on that same lame excuse. Oh, this, yeah, I guess I just have to live with it. No, you don't. You don't have to live with it. You can have an abundance of a life. You don't have to, settle. You can surpass. You do not have to settle. Say your goals to yourself and say it like it's real. Imagine it that it's really happening. See yourself going to the bank and cashing that check. See yourself inventing those great things. See yourself in peaceful bliss. I could just see somebody wanting peace and they're in that position, like that yoga position where they're just at peace with themselves. It reminds me of the Kung Fu Panda movie. When you see Shifu there. And Shifu says, you're going to get inner peace. Ooh, wait, that's good stuff. And he's just there, and he's meditating on inner peace. Oh, I have inner peace with myself. Good stuff, man. Imagine these things happening. Use your supercomputer for super events and super goals, not the mundane stuff. 2 plus 2 is 4. The brain is a lot bigger than that. Come on now. You still on 2 plus 2 is 4. You need to get into some quantum physics now. And not trigonometry. You need to move it up to quantum physics, man. Because the brain can handle it. But as long as you keep yourself frozen, oh, well, I'm happy with 2 plus 2, Rabbi. 2 plus 2 is 6. My goodness. You're still dividing, and you're not multiplying yet. When the God that you serve, He wants you multiplying. He put you on this earth to multiply, not to divide. Come on, Mishpachah. I'm your biggest cheerleader. And I'm going to root you on until I can't root on anymore. And I don't think that ever come a point where I can't root on. Because I'll root you on from the other side as well. I'm your biggest cheerleader. When you understand who you really are and what your name is. What's my name? Ask yourself that. In the mirror, what is my name? Your name is Israel. The promises that the Master Yahweh gave to Jacob, to Israel, are your promises. That's for you. Realize it. That's for you. That's who you are. That's your name. Wow. You know, I was looking at this fear not issue. The Master Yeshua said it several times as well. He said it as well. You see, fear is one of the crippling things. This is one of the negative things that is hindering a lot of people. In the Torah, outside of the Torah, it doesn't matter. Like, you just talk about humanity. It's fear. Fear. Fear is there. You cannot ignore fear because it's going to be there. But you just have to learn and equip yourselves with the proper tools on how to deal with fear and how you can use fear as fuel. And you don't allow fear to paralyze you or freeze you. How many of you been that way one time or another where actually fear has paralyzed you? And fear will paralyze you in such a way where it'll just leave you in ignorance. Because you're fearful. You're fearful to step out and read that book or take on that understanding. But that guy's got to be crazy to say something like that. But if you just sit down and think for a minute. HaKohen gave you a great example of one of his personal stories as a child. As a teenager, when he was dealing with the Moroccan kid. And the Moroccan kid really gave him some understanding, but HaKohen, he couldn't hear it because he was in ignorance. Now, many years later, he realizes this. As a young whippersnapper now, he realizes it. But when he was just that adolescent, he couldn't see it because he was living in ignorance. How many of you have been there? All of you here in North America, have you come out of any kind of religion? You all are ignorant. And I don't say ignorant in a bad way. And I'm not trying to put you down to say that, but you just didn't know any better. It's because you've been taught a certain way. And let me tell you an insider secret. Is that pastors, preachers, evangelists, they prey on your fear. That's how they're preying on your fear. This is what they do. You think about it. You sit there and just listen. They're preying on your fears. That's exactly what they do. And they're using your fears against you to keep you down and to subjugate you in such a way. And I'm not even going to even point the finger at all of them. Sometimes, the majority of the times, we're just doing it to ourselves. Am I correct? Let's not point the finger at every Joe Blog out there. If your name is Joe, no offense. But let's just look at ourselves. When we do that what? Inner conversation? Some of us even fear talking to the inner man, our inner selves. You know why you do that? Let me tell you how you do it. Because the first thing you do when inner man starts talking to you, you rebuke it. Get thee behind me, Satan. The evil one has nothing to do with this. You're scared to talk to yourself. Because you explain it away, you rebuke it. You're rebuking yourself. So where do you think you're going to end up? You're going to end up frozen. You're going to end up paralyzed, not being able to move. But at the same time, you can use that very fear as fuel to get you to the next step. You see, because Rick, okay, some person say, well, yeah, I want that peace. I want to live in a peaceful state. That's my goal. Well, my goal is I want to be an inventor. And I will encourage you all with your goals to look at people who's already there. Look at people who already have that. Study and read books on people who were inventors. And you'll see a common thread in all of these stories is that the road to your goal is not a straight road. Sometimes you may go left field, right field, but eventually you'll reach your goal. Think about that. Remember, Jacob went in for one wife, just like I told you, it's our history. But he came up with how many? 4. My goodness. And what did it do to take him to get to that road? This man had to work for another man to get some wives. He was working for him. So, the uniqueness of how you get there is not important, but what's important is to stay on that road. Now, let me go back to what Dan Naiman said. Now, he gives these. Man, I left out one important thing. Because, let me tell you about Dan Naiman. The first time he went to the comedy class, the first day he stood up in front of his comedy class, everybody laughed at his jokes. Everybody did. They thought, oh, Dan Naiman, he's very funny, he's going to be very successful at this. The first time he talked in front of people and was putting out his little spiel on his jokes, everybody laughed at him. There's other students, I guess, or other people in this comedy class. Okay, so then Dan Naiman said he went back the second time for his next class, and he was up there telling jokes and nobody laughed. Nobody laughed. Not even the church mouse laughed. Nobody laughed at his jokes. So then this thought came up, oh, I need to quit. I'm not going to be no good at this, he said. But then you know what he said? He went back again, and he kept going back. So what does that entail? That entails what? That entails never quit, never give up. And Dan Naiman talks about this, and he sums it all up in this. Start small, think positive, and don't quit. Start small, think positive, and don't quit. Start small, think positive, and don't quit. Mishpachah, I firmly believe there's some credence to that man's process, to his strategy. Take heed. This is how he conquered his fear. This man stared fear in the face and said, okay, since I don't like talking to people, I'm going to be a comedian to where I'm going to be in front of people. Do you see? You need to do the very same thing that fear is telling you you can't do. You need to go and do it, and don't quit doing it. Start small. Think positive. You know what another one of my goals is, Mr. Bahar? I'm not scared to say it and claim because it's going to be. Another one of my goals is to make $10,000 a month from home with the Forex. Now, this week, I didn't make $10,000 a month, but you know what? I did make some money. I have more money in my Forex account than I did last week. Start small. Am I going to give up just because this week, oh, well, I didn't make $10,000 this week. Well, hey, see, that's my inner man. See, my inner man trying to tell me, oh, wait a minute. It's only been, this week you didn't make $10,000. Well, that's not my goal, inner man. My goal is to make $10,000 a month. Do you see what I mean? So sometimes you even have to correct your inner man, because your inner man, you see that fear will come in. Oh, see, you'll never be able to do that. Yeah, that's just unreasonable. No, that's very reachable. With the Forex and with the tools that that have been placed in my hand, I tell you, I'm so gracious to my mentor, the son of Aaron. My goodness, we have some great tools at our disposal. It's feasible. People are already doing it, Mishpachah, and that's the key. The mindset that you have to get with a master that already has that same mindset. This is what I told you earlier. For all of your goals, you just need to find somebody that already has your goals. That's your fuel. Somebody's already done it. So it can be done as you begin to deal and have those inner conversations with yourself. Because sometimes the inner self is going to try to shake you up and try to discourage you. Oh, that can't be done. You only made this amount. Yeah, but I made, you see, you always got to stay positive. My account has more money in it this month, this week, than it did last week. And we're only talking weeks. We didn't even talking a month yet. You see where we're going? You start small. Stay positive. And what? Don't quit. Never quit. I'm grateful to Dan Nanan's fear of not being able to talk to people. I'm so grateful for that. Because why? It has taught me a great lesson on how to deal with my fears and how to have those inner conversations with myself and how to stay positive with myself. I don't need to be positive to the whole world. I just need to be positive to myself. Mishpahah. Now, I'm going to get ready to close, but let's look at Jacob's situation. Let's look at Jacob's situation. So Jacob has been promised these great promises. He's been told to pack up everything and go back to the land of his fathers. Go back to the promised land. Settle there. Take your wives, now that you have them, after many years. See, this is why you never quit. You never give up. Because it may not happen overnight, Mishpahah. Let's be realistic here. You have to have these inner man conversations with yourself and tell yourself, you live in a real world. Let's be realistic. It may not happen overnight, but you keep plugging at it. You keep working at it. So he's told he's going to go back to the land. He's going to go back to Canaan now. It's time for you to go back to Canaan. And I'm going to be with you. The Master Yahweh says, I'm going to be with you. Then you look at Genesis chapter 32, verse 6. Then the messengers returned to Yaakov saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you and 400 men are with him. My goodness. What's the first thing going through Jacob's mind? What's Jacob thinking about now? Well, look at verse 7. History tells us, right? It stares us in the face. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Greatly afraid and distressed. You see, the situation, circumstance is nothing but fuel power, baby. Is the situation, circumstance, you know what that is? That's the gas station. You pull it into the gas station to get the fuel. How much fuel you put in your vehicle, it depends. It depends on Genesis chapter 32, verse 7. So Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. How much fuel you think got into his car when he pulled up into the gas station? How much fuel that is going to get into him to make his journey? You know, his goal was what? Is to get to Canaan. And he's told you're going to get there. The Master Yahweh is with you. So why all of a sudden at this little circumstance, you pull into the gas station, little situation comes up, little event. You see, remember we talked about when you're trying to get you're trying to get from here where you are at point A to your goal. It's not going to be a straight line. There are going to be twists and turns in the road. But eventually you'll get to your goal. Why? All of these little circumstances are to help build your character. Are the character building modules that we all have to go through in this thing called life. You must go through this, Mishpah. What good is it to go from point A to point B? The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. That's the shortest distance. But what have you learned in that short distance? Probably absolutely nothing. This is why you have to have twists and turns in here. Because it's going to build your character. It's going to make you. It's not going to break you. It's going to make you into who you are. It's a beautiful journey, Mishpahah. Dad Nana says stay positive. How many of you are that like? Regardless of what's going on around you, stay positive. Here's Jacob. So Jacob, in verse 7, so Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. Wow. That's not part of the plan, but that's reality. Because afraid, fear is going to come. The first time a situation comes up that's outside of what, your preconceived notion is, we're going to go directly from point A to point B. I can pretty much guarantee you it's not going to happen that way. There's going to be twists and turns in the road. There's going to be events, circumstances, situations that pop up. They're going to show up. You're going to stare them in the face, and what are you going to do? Are you going to freeze, or are you going to get some fuel? Because these are your choices. These are the only two choices that you have, Mr. All right? So then Jacob goes into his mode of dividing. Remember, we serve a God of not dividing, but of multiplying. Why is Jacob dividing here? Genesis chapter 32, verse 7. Now Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels, into two companies. Now, let's stay on point here. Remember, we talked about a journey. A goal is not a direct shot. So, yeah, Jacob has this moment of fear. We are going to have it. The moment where, okay, we may make some mistakes. So what? But Jacob did not turn around. Remember that. Remember, stay positive. Jacob did not turn around. He did not say, okay, well, we're going back now. I'm afraid. My brother come with all these people. I know what he want to do already. I already know what he want to do. Remember how Cohen talked about this. You preconceive things. You already think things into existence. You speak things into existence. What you're creating. Oh, man, these people coming. Hey, did his messengers at any time tell him that his brother's coming to kill him? Think about that now. Read the story. What did his servant say? His servant just said, and we came to your brother Esau, and he is also coming to meet you. And 400 of his men are with him. Anywhere in it did they say, hey, your brother's coming, and he's bringing fire and brimstone. He's coming to kill you. He's going to slaughter everything that you have. He's going to kill your families, blah, blah. Was any of that even said in there? Do you see how we can take things? How many of you have even done this yourself? Boss man wants to talk to you. Somebody comes to you, HR comes to you, say, hey, the boss wants to see you. And automatically, immediately you begin to think, oh man, I'm going to get fired. I done something wrong. What did I do wrong? How many of you've been there? And it's just the same scenario. Oh man, my goodness. You see, you don't think positive. The boss, you go in to see the boss, hallelujah, had just gave you a raise. And you went in there thinking, oh man, I'm getting ready to get fired. I've done something wrong. I'm going to get demoted. You know, they were talking about last week that they downsizing. I think I'm one of the downsized. Do you see where we're going? Same scenario. We start to dream up. See, this is why you got to stay positive and create positive thought for yourself. Create positive scenarios and envision yourself going in there seeing the boss, and he's going to give you a raise. You're getting a raise. Matter of fact, you're getting not demoted, but you're getting ready to get promoted. You're being recognized by the boss. See where we're going, Mishpah? This is real life stuff here. Jacob is going through real life events. He was a real man just like you and I. What's your name? What's your name, Mishpah? Is your name Jacob? Or is your name Israel? Like we're going to get into in a minute. But then look what Jacob does. He has that lapse moment, just like I do with my inner man. Oh, it's only been a week and you only made this amount of money. You see, that inner man will tell you, oh, you know. But then you have to tell your inner man, yeah, I only made this amount of money, but it's more money than I had last week in my Forex account. Baruch Hashem, Master Jesus of Nazareth. I'm X amount of dollars closer to reaching my goal. But it's the process. You see, because it's the process, Mishpah, that can be replicated. That's why I tell you, if you want to be an inventor, go and read books on people, biographies on inventors. Because the process works. The process has been proven. If you want to be a peaceful man, Go and read books on men of peace. It's the process. All you must do is practice the process. The process doesn't change. The God of Israel is no respecter of persons, the creator of the heavens and the universes. It works. Have people made $10,000 a month from home on the Forex before me? Absolutely. The process. I just follow the process. The same will happen for me as well. You think about it for a minute. Your goals. It's all about a process. But many people give up. And many people don't stay positive. And so they never reach the goals. They never reach the desires. And they just give up. Let's face it. They end up just giving up on life. Yah forbid that that's you. Don't be one of those. But then, you know what? Jacob's inner man comes into place. Comes into play here. First, he divides. You know, Genesis chapter 32:7 tells us that so Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. But then look, go down to verse 9 of Genesis chapter 32. Now all of a sudden, then Jacob said, look what then Jacob said, O Elohim of my father Abraham, the Elohim of my father Yitzhak, Yahweh who said to me. Yahweh who said to me. Now we're cooking with grease here. We're cooking with that. We're cooking with coconut oil. We're cooking with that almond oil. Who said to me, return to your country and to your mishpachah, to your family, and I will deal well with you. My goodness. Powerful words. Positive words. You can take those words to the bank, mishpachah. So as you go through that moment, because you're going to have that moment, fear and distress, oh, I'm so afraid, what am I going to do? You're pulling out your hair, blah, blah, blah. Go back to the words of the Master Yahweh. Go back to the covenant. What's your name? Remember we said that? What is your name? Return to your country and to your mishpachah, to your family, and I will deal well with you. Well, how is the God of Israel, how is the Master Yahweh going to deal well with Jacob if he's dead? If he's killed off by his brother? You see? Inner man conversations here. Jacob goes on to say in verse 10 of Genesis 32, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown your servant. For I crossed over the Jordan with my staff, and now I have become two camps of people. Look at verse 11. Rescue me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him. You see what he says there? For I fear him. You see what fear does? But again, Jacob stayed strong. Jacob was very strong, lest he come and attack me, and the mother with the children. You see, he's thinking full-fledged slaughter, slaughterhouse. When he just stated the promises that Master Yahweh said, that you promised me that you would deal well with me. You said this to me, that you would deal well with me. So why am I in fear of my brother? Last time I checked, I'm still not in the land. I haven't returned to my country yet. So I cannot be annihilated. You see, you need to have these kind of conversations with yourself, your inner man. Because your inner man sometimes will be in defeatist mode. Oh man, how you gonna ever do that? That's just unimaginable. You see? That's just unimaginable. You can't do that. This is your inner man. Don't point the finger at other people. It's your inner man doing this to you. You need to negate the conversation and bring it back to the positive side. Go back to the promises. Go back to the covenant. Go back to the words of the Master Yahweh. They stand. They will always stand true and hold true. And this will put you back on and get you back on the proper mindset. And not in defeatist mode, in the frozen mode. in the paralyzed mode to where you just can't get on with the mission at hand. Mission at hand here was getting back into the country. Go back to the country. Go back to the country of your fathers. That mission is not complete. So why are we in fear of death and destruction? Isn't that the same model today? People are fearful of death and destruction. Some people that are under the umbrella of the Torah. Oh, I'm going to die soon. No, there's work to be done. You weren't awakened and you weren't called out of your slumber to go back to sleep. That just doesn't make sense. But we have these conversations with ourselves. Oh, no. Why now? Oh, well, you're worried about dying. You're worried about this, that, the other, and the third. Well, you need to be getting on with life. What is he afraid of? That his brother was going to kill him. A fear of death. Yet the mission wasn't completed, Mr. Hawk. Mission not complete. So, I mean, there's still work to be done. The promises of the Most Highest will be seen through. And again, you can read the story. What happens here? Jacob pleases his brother, pleasing with the presence. That's the best way to do it. You're trying to mend a relationship. Always come with the honey and not the vinegar, Mishpahah. This is what Jacob is showing us here. Bring gifts, you know. Bring gifts. Always come with the honey and not the vinegar. Pleasing with the presence. Look at Genesis 32 and 20. And also say, behold, your servant Yaakov is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the presence that goes before me, and afterward I will see his face, and perhaps he will accept me. Always come with the presence, whatever form that may be. Maybe loving kindness, maybe peace. When there's war at hand, peace is always good. Come with the proper presence. That seems to always help. This great man. Now, you must understand, Jacob was no, he was no pushover. He was no wimpy kid. We're not talking about a wimpy kid here. Jacob was a very strong man. Very powerful. You know, this is the same man that was rolling stones away off of wells by himself. So let's not underestimate Jacob as some wimpy kid, because he wasn't. He wasn't a wimpy man. He wasn't a wimpy kid. He was a strong man, physically strong. We know about what happened. Now, I want you to see this point as well in what happened with this wrestling all night long. WrestleMania. This was like a WrestleMania in today's terms. When you look at Genesis 32 and 23, then he took them and he sent them over the brook and sent over what he had. Now listen to this. This is very important to understand. Very important pattern that you'll see. Then Yaakov was left alone. That's key. You see, this is when you get to the nitty and the gritty. You see, then Yaakov was left alone. How many of you been at this point right now where you say, man, Rabbi, I'm alone. Oh, I'm just so alone. This is the, you see, right now you create the sauce. This is the sauce right now for that wonderful, wonderful cuisine. This is the sauce. This is what needs to be happening. You need to be left alone. All distractions, everything is out of the way. Sent away, put away, however it goes away, it's just away to where you're left alone. Remember we talked about the inner man. You have to be able to deal with the inner man, with yourself. Alone is some awesome time. Never underestimate the power of alone. It's because it's when you're left alone is when you truly begin to see yourself as yourself. And you can begin to ask yourself these very pertinent questions like, who am I and what's my name? What is my name? Because if you can't be honest with yourself, let's face it, you can't be honest with anyone. So we see the WrestleMania takes place when Jacob was alone. He was alone, Mishpahad. That's key. I want you to remember that. Genesis 32 and 23. Then Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. WrestleMania, remember we talked about. Look at verse 25 of 32 of Genesis. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And they continue, WrestleMania, here we go. Hakohen mentioned this earlier when he talked about the name change. And the name change takes place. But I want to read something that comes from the footnote here that's so very important out of the Hidden Truth of the Great Scrolls. Please get this study Bible. Will really help you. And really help you understand what's really going on. Factually. The preposition is not just what is your name, but what is your nature and frame. And why do you want a blessing? See, the Malach of Yahweh was testing him because he was about to change Jacob's destiny forever. You know, Dave Naaman said this as well as he was doing this interview for Forbes. He said, if I would have given up after I went to that second class, and you can go read it, I posted it for you. He said, if I'd have gave up after I went to that second comedy class, if I would have stopped going because people didn't laugh at my jokes, I would have had a whole new reality. My reality wouldn't be the reality as it is today, as I'm selling out, comedy clubs now. And that my whole reality would have been different. Remember, he said, never give up. Never quit, he said. He was wrestling WrestleMania with the Master Yahweh, and he never gave up. He never gave up. Then he said, I'm not going to let you go. You see, remember what I told you. Jacob was no wimpy kid. You see? What's your name today? You're no wimpy kid. Don't see yourself as wimpy. You are no wimpy kid, Mishpahah. You're not wimpy. What's your name? So then he said, I'm not even going to let you go without a blessing. How many, who at one time or another is not wrestling with something? We all are at one time or another. We're wrestling with things. We're always wrestling with things, whether we want to agree or disagree or acknowledge that we're wrestling with anything or not. But you're always going to be wrestling with something. Something in your life. Your inner man is always wrestling with something. But you have to help your... What's your name, Mishpahah? We're getting ready to close here. You see, because you have the ability to change your destiny. You don't have to be like your ancestors were. And I mean your ancestors here in North America. You don't have to follow that same old broken record. You have the ability this day to change your destiny. Change your name. Change your name, Mishpahah. Thus changing your nature. Who are you? Ask yourself this question. Who are you? So now, after this WrestleMania takes place, Jacob gets a name change. He gets a new name, Israel. Baruch Hashem, power in that name. Who are you? Israel should have great significance. There's power in that name. You're Israel. You are Israel. That's who you are. Well, no, Rabbi, I'm Joe, I'm Sammy, I'm Sally, I'm Lucy. You are Israel. Maybe some days you do feel like Sally and Susie and Lucy and Dan and Sam and Bill and Tommy. You are Israel. Awesome. And I say it to you with enthusiasm because that's the way you need to be. Many people go through life mundane and like Eeyore. Oh no, there's no Eeyore over here. Full of enthusiasm, full of youth, full of joy, full of sound mind, and full of what I petition for daily. And I say in my affirmations of wisdom. Wisdom. That's how you need to be. You should be excited right now because you are Israel. And when you really understand what that means, Mishpahah, my goodness, you'll be jumping through walls. You're Israel. Powerful. Powerful stuff for those that will understand it. For those that can understand it. For those that have been given revelation to understand who they really are and what power you really have. So the whole scenario is brought down into this. Instead of a slaughter, a mass slaughter in his way, as he did division, he was doing his division, and he realized, okay, I got to divide my families up. This is what has to go on. Look at Genesis. You know, Jacob gets his name changed. Powerful, powerful stuff. But do you know? Remember we talked about getting from point A to point B? It was not a straight line. If you note, Jacob, he did not waver. When you look at, the goal, he just had some situation that come up. He had a situation of somebody trying to kill him along the way. A little situation. But Jacob never turned around. Jacob never quit. Yes, he may have stumbled and fumbled a little bit, but Jacob never quit. What's your name? Your name today is you're not a quitter. You should never quit. Never give up on your goals. Never give up on your dreams. Never quit. Genesis 33:3. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Verse 4 of Genesis 33. Now Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him. And they wept. My goodness. Family reunion. Awesome. Great stuff. What is your name this day? Yeah, you may make some plans on your way to your goal that don't work. So what? Don't quit. Dan Nanan. Second day, he's taking his... First day, everybody laughed at his jokes when he was going through the comedy class. Next day, nobody laughed at his jokes. Did he quit? After the second day, no he didn't. He went back a third day. And he kept going back. And now he's selling out shows. For a man that had a fear of public speaking, what did he do? He stared his fear right in the face. And he used his fear for fuel. And now he's using that same fear for finances. Because he's making a lot of money selling out comedy clubs. Selling them out. This is humanity. The true basics of humanity. You put your religions to the side. Religion is not going to get you anywhere. You change your way of life, your way of living. This is what we follow, a way of life. Our forefather Abraham was no religion. He lived a certain lifestyle. So did Jacob. He lived a certain lifestyle, certain way that they lived. And some of us, our nature, we need to change. Our nature is continually evolving, changing. And that's going to happen. But you must always remember in the back of your mind, who are you? And we look at the Master, Yeshua. I'm getting ready to close, but we look at the Master, Yeshua. Let's look at some of our Levites, the priesthood, and what they wrote of the Master, Yeshua. The Master Yeshua, and before I do that, you'll find something very interesting. In my studies, Out of all of our books in the Bible, which book do you think talks about fear not the most? Which book? Out of all of our books. Anybody want to take a gander at that? Which book talks about and is, referenced most fear not? There you go, Rabbi Yosef Hilton, the book of Isaiah. There's a lot of wisdom in that, and this is why today we need to hear it more than anything, is do not fear. Because during the end times, which in the latter days, there's going to be a lot of people fearing things, and fear is going to be a stumbling block that prevents people from truly living a quality of life or even an abundant life. It's going to be fear. Fear of whatever. It's paralyzing them. The book of Isaiah, Yeshayahu, book of Isaiah. But listen to what Isaiah 43 says. And I'd encourage you, when you're in that moment of fear, go read Isaiah 43. It's very uplifting. It's very positive. It's going to build you back up when your inner man or even yourself is tearing yourself down and saying you can't do something. You cannot create and you cannot accomplish your goals. Well, guess what? Isaiah 43:1 says this. But now thus saith Yahweh, who created you, O Jacob, O Jacob, and he that formed you, O Israel. He says what? Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by your name. You are mine. My goodness. And this all goes back to the WrestleMania. Change in nature. Change in destiny. Who controls that? We do. But we got to know who we are. We cannot continue to live in ignorance, because then we don't know who we are. And then we just live in a shell of life. My goodness, let's not go through life like that. Let's not live a shell of a life, right? The Master Yeshua says in Matthew, Levite, and book of Matthew, the Master Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, says this in Matthew chapter 10, verse 28, and fear them not which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both the soul and the body in Sheol. You see, our fear is misplaced. This is why this rinky-dink fear that shows itself to us on this earth, it needs to be put in place. It's actually used for fuel. Jacob used his fear. He was afraid, but he did not let that change his goal. And he remembered, what is my goal? My goal is to get back to the land. I was told I was going to get back to the land, and the Master Yahweh was going to serve me well and do me well and do well by me. I'm going to close with this one. In Luke, the book of Luke, another Levite, Baruch Hashem, Master Jesus of Nazareth. Look what he wrote about the Master. Because all of you want to be made whole in some way, shape, form, or fashion. But we see in Luke chapter 8, verse 49, we'll read from verse 49. While he spoke, there came one of the rulers of the Qualal, saying to him, your daughter is dead. Trouble not the rabbi. Look at verse 50 of Luke chapter 8. But when Yeshua heard it, when Jesus heard it, Jesus of Nazareth, when he heard it, he answered him, saying, fear not, believe only. I'm going to tell you those same words today. Fear not, but only believe that your goal can be achieved. A great man once said this, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. That's from memorization. I've been memorizing that ever since I read that. I'll say that again. If you listen to it, it'll blow you away. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. You think about that for a minute. Your brains are supercomputers. And what did the Master Yeshua, Jesus of Nazareth, say? Think about what he just said. Think about what he just said. He told his person, man, everybody tell him, oh no, don't worry about bothering the rabbi. Your child is dead. Your child is dead. Done dusted. But what does the Master say in Luke chapter 8, verse 50? But when Yeshua heard it, when Jesus of Nazareth heard it, he answered him saying, fear not, believe only. Believe only, and she shall be made whole. You're being made whole. The goal, well, this man coming in was thinking, oh man, my daughter, I want my daughter alive. My daughter's not dead. My daughter's not dead. Everybody running to her, she's dead as a doornail. She's pushing up daisies. Fear not. Fear not, Mishpachah. However you want to be made whole, only believe. And she shall be made whole. Believe, and your situation will be made whole, Mishpachah. Your situation. Take that to the bank. You can take that to the bank. But you got to really understand it, and you got to begin to really conceive it in your mind. You got to have these positive communications with yourself. The biggest battle is within, not without. It's within your own self. That's the biggest battle that you're fighting this day, is with yourself. You conquer that battle, you're more than a conqueror. Because for too long in society, we've been taught and we've been conditioned to think a certain way. But, you know, that way was wrong for a very long time. Very, very long time. We must begin to think another way. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to leave you with this thought. What is your name? What is your name? What is your name? Ask yourself that question. You're Israel. I'll say shalom, shalom to most of you in this world, and Shabbat shalom to you here on this side of the pond. And enjoy your families, your friends, and your loved ones as you really understand the relevance and importance of relationship and families, and you continue to grow that and nurture that into a rooted olive tree. Shabbat shalom, shalom, shalom to all. Back over to you, Kohen. Any questions? Please, let them out now, or we'll just close up the room and leave it at that.
Todah for that, Rabbi Kefa. So the book that I was referencing earlier regarding consummation of pork-related products is a book by Kevin Trudeau, and it says Natural Cures Revealed. As a #1 New York Times best-selling author of natural cures. And I want to just read the bit. And in his chapters, which says stay away from these products, chapter 11, and it reads as follows. It says, here is what Dr. Jeff McCombs has to say about eliminating pork from your diet. People are always asking me about the risk associated with eating pork and pork byproducts. There are multiple references all around the world as to the dangers of eating pork. Being in practice for many years, I have first-hand experience in what occurs when someone stops eating pork and all pork byproducts. Over the years, with virtual 100% certainty, I can tell you that when my patients go off pork, they virtually always feel much better, have more energy, and their symptoms, whatever they may be, start to disappear as if by magic. Ironically, if they start to eat pork again, their symptoms reappear, the energy levels plummets, and the feeling general malaise takes over. One of the greatest risks in eating pork is an unknown one. It is a retrovirus called porcine endogenous. This retrovirus lives in all pork cells. Scientists have no idea how this retrovirus affects humans. What is known is that these viruses survive heating and cooking even at extreme high temperatures over long periods of time. If you are not familiar with what retroviruses can do, think of AIDS. the symptoms that come from AIDS are associated most often with retroviruses. Retroviruses use the body's own cells to replicate themselves. This means that retroviruses go undetected for many, many years as they spread throughout the body. Brown University reported that retroviruses pose a significant threat to the public. When a person eats pork on a regular basis, they are loading their body with these retroviruses. The retroviruses dramatically reduce the body's ability to fight off disease, suppress the person's immune system, and make the consumer of pork more susceptible to disease, as well as creating a general overall malaise. When a person goes off pork for 30 days, they almost always have an increased sense of well-being, a heightened sense of awareness, a high level of consciousness, are much happier, smile more, laugh more, sleep better, and whatever physical symptoms they have, almost always those symptoms diminish or vanish. Eating pork causes many problems, including hormonal imbalances, joint and back pains, inflammation, excessive histamine production, headaches, increased susceptibility to colds and flus, as well as potentially being partially responsible for degenerative disease such as arthritis, heart disease, and cancer. From what I personally observed, I believe eating pork is like vaccinating your body against health. Pigs also harbor many other toxins, are latent with diseases, and contain worms. Most flu viruses that we encounter in the United States come from the lungs of pigs that create an incubator for the combination of bird, human, and porcine viruses. The Center for Disease Control has stated that as many as 200 of these combined viruses make their way from southern China to the United States each year through pigs. Pigs scavenge and eat anything in their path, including dead insects, worms, rotting carcasses, rats, their own feces, garbage, and other pigs. Whatever a pig eats turns to meat on its bones. Within a few hours, pork is virtually undigested garbage. Pork causes stress in the body, both physically and emotionally, and gives rise to physical poisoning. This is a fact that is well known in the scientific community. It is obvious to everyone that when pork products are not prepared properly, sickness can result in their consumption. However, this also applies to all pork products, including cured meats such as ham and bacon, smoked meats, sausages, etc. When someone consumes a freshly killed pork product, instant symptoms develop, including acute inflammation of the appendix, gallbladder, colitis, intestinal problems, gastroenteritis, typhoid, eczema, various forms of abscesses, spasms, etc. These symptoms are also observed in people after consuming any pork products, including salami, bacon, sausage, and ham. As I mentioned, flu viruses in pork live in the lungs. A professor at the London Institute for Virus Research stated that flu viruses remained alive and active and were found in sausages, hot dogs, ham, bacon, pork chops, virtually all pork products. This means that the flu viruses and other viruses that live in the lungs of pigs and the tissues of pigs survive the cooking and preparation process. When you eat any pork products, you're eating living dangerous viruses. Additionally, pork is a primary source of the Taenia solium tapeworm. This type of parasite spreads throughout the body. 1 in 6 Americans has trichinosis and gets it from eating pork. Like most parasites, these go undetected for years and years and years. These parasites steal nutrients from our cells and promote inflammation and degeneration within all tissues. They help create an environment that is conducive for cancer, diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, as well as indigestion, gas, bloating, acid reflux, fatigue, and depression. So whether it's the retroviruses, the parasite tapeworms, the flu viruses, the histamine increasing compounds, or any of the other toxins present in pork, you may want to consider why you would ever gamble with your health by eating pork. From Confucius to Moses to Muhammad to present-day science and research, pork has always been and continues to be a very risky health choice. It may be the other white meat, but it's definitely not the right meat. Dr. McCombs makes some excellent points. I would encourage all of you, if you want to do an interesting test, to do what I did. I eliminated pork from my diet for 30 full days to see if I noticed any difference. I did in fact feel lighter. I felt more alive. My breathing was better. I felt generally healthier, but I wasn't totally convinced. So I went out and ate my favorite meal of pork loin roast. Within minutes, I became violently ill. That was enough for me to know that pork is poison. If you have symptoms of any kind, if you have illness or disease of any kind, if you want to be cured of what is ailing you, you must do the steps in chapter 6 in the Natural Cures book. One of those important steps is eliminating or at least dramatically reducing the amount of pork you consume. I do believe that once you start reducing pork, every time you eat it, you will feel so horrible that you will see that a total elimination of pork may be the right choice for you. I hope it is, because I do know you will see and feel a dramatic difference within the first month. Okay, so this came from the book, Kevin Trudeau's book called More Natural Cures Revealed. I guess you could probably look it up, and if you desire to purchase it, you can do so. It's published by Alliance Publishing Group. This is what it speaks about pork and pork-related products. Now, coming back to the book of Genesis and the book of Leviticus and the book of Deuteronomy, it is quite clear that the reason that God has told the Bnai Yisrael, the children of Israel, to refrain from pork is these are some of the reasons, and there are probably many other reasons. So I have given you just some reasons. There may be numerous reasons that we still don't know. The book is just called Natural Cures Revealed. That's the name. So search it up on Google and you'll find it somewhere over there. So that's basically my take, is that God's command to us to not consume pork. By the way, it is not totally related to spirituality. Unfortunately, the problem is this, that most rabbis out there are so ignorant of these things themselves that they want to make everything spiritual and forget about the physical. We are physical beings. We live in a physical world, and we obviously have a parallel spiritual world. But if we are not physically whole, what chances are there of us to experience any spirituality? That's a question that everybody needs to address to themselves. Now, I'm not saying that those people who eat pork in our society are condemned in any way, but I'm just saying this, that it really has a very unhealthy benefit, and unhealthy effects on your health. So you may want to look at that whether this is something, because I know in China pork is a major product that everybody eats over there because it's cheap. Pigs are produced over there in very large quantities, and the meat is cheaper. And China doesn't have good quality beef, by the way. If you didn't know that, it might come as a surprise to some of you, that China's beef quality is highly questionable. The US exports beef to China alongside some other countries, and so this is the beef is obviously expensive. Beef is expensive to buy in China, so therefore pork is much cheaper. So people, obviously their option is to buy pork, and a lot of people today in China are ill, and they go to Chinese hospitals because of that. Now the question, is it okay to eat liver? Beef liver, absolutely, it's okay to eat beef liver. Just make sure that you salt it and you remove the blood, and you're good to go. Yes, Kevin Trudeau is the author of that book. So I would encourage you all to look it up for yourselves. Obviously, I don't think it's a question for us. We, the people of Israel, we don't really care about pork and pork products. We don't eat them, period. Now, of course, those of you who lived in ignorance in your past, and who lived in North America and didn't know any better, of course you were all eating pork. That's what was being fed to you and your forefathers, and they all ate it happily, and look at the diseases they encountered as a result. I mean, today many people in North America alone suffer from many diseases that are attributed to this kind of eating habits. So one of the things that you can do for yourself is make sure that your families, those families of yours that don't know about this information, I think it'll be at least wise to make that information known to them, so they may refrain from putting their bodies into high risk diseases, and that might benefit them generally. Whether they believe in the Torah, whether they believe in God, or whether they believe in God's commandments, I think it's secondary to this. I think this in itself is much more dangerous to healthy living than anything else. Rabbi Kefa is saying that his uncle is on life support after triple bypass surgery behind eating pork. So, that's one case, and there's probably thousands of other cases that can affect you as a result. No, vertigo wasn't mentioned as an illness, but vertigo could be derived from your brain being cloudy. Why? Because you have a lot of fat in your cells, and fat could derive from eating the wrong meats. Pork is one such meat that you could eat and derive a lot of fat from it. So yes, that would be one thing. Having said that, but other than that, I would encourage you to look at your diets and decide what is right for you. I do not encourage you to go vegan, because there's all these vegan dieters out there. I don't encourage it because we're not supposed to be vegetarians. But if due to some health condition you want to go vegan, that's obviously entirely up to you. I don't encourage it because the animals that we eat that are given us are up for a purpose. And beef can have a lot of steroids, but having said that, so can everything else around you. So you're not going to be able to avoid everything in life, but I would say the healthy dose of beef is actually good for you, as is a healthy dose of other meats like fish and other meats that you can consume, like chicken and turkey and stuff like that. So with that, Rabbi Kefa is saying, watch the documentary on Netflix on the magic pills. So okay, I think we're done. We're gonna close the room. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. Have a great Shabbat, have a great week across the pond, and we'll see you next week. Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Shalom to you.